Got her notepad, she's ready to go, right? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Highland Park Plan and Design Commission for October 3, 2023. Mr. Fontaine, if you would please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Arnold.
Here.
Commissioner Mantis.
Present.
Commissioner Bruckman. Commissioner Kirsch.
Present.
Commissioner Hecht.
Present.
Vice Chair Moore.
Present.
And Chairman Hainsford.
Present.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman. I recognize Council Liaison Littler and Corporation Counsel Martinez as well.
And Student Commissioner
And Student Commissioner
Roberts.
Roberts.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fontaine. We have a number of items on tonight's agenda, starting with approval of some minutes. And then we have scheduled business of a design review for a proposed fence and gate with variations at 3100 to 3104 Skokie Valley Road. Continuation of a public hearing related to a PUD and SUP for a special use permit for a preliminary and final plan development and special use permit to establish a motor vehicle washing facility at 1970 First Street, and a zoning text amendment, a continuation of a public hearing for a zoning text amendment to modify regulations related to solar power uses and structures, and a continuation of a public hearing for a zoning text amendment to modify two sections of the code related to planned developments and planned unit developments, requirements and applicability, as well as that could impact other sections of the city code as appropriate. All right, so the first item of business is approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting of September 19th, 2023. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hecht, seconded by?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Moore. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. First item of scheduled business is design review for proposed fence and gate with fence variations located at 3100 to 3104 Skokie Valley Road. Mr. Burhop, are you going to do a brief presentation?
Yes, Chair, a very brief presentation.
You are recognized, sir.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. My name is Carl Burhop. I'm a senior planner with the City of Highland Park Planning Division in the Community Development Department. This is a request for a fence. There are two parts to the fence. So part of it is replacement of existing chain link fence with a new chain link that requires a variation from Chapter 173 of City Code. It also requires design review per Chapter 176. And then there's also fence proposed that is compliant. That is the section that will face the highway. So this is a snap of a plan that the applicant provided. So red in the top right here. So to orient yourself, this is the highway. This is Highway 41 or Skokie Valley Road as it's addressed in our GIS. So this red L, that is the new code compliant fence, 30 by 30 feet. That will be the ornamental metal with the powder coat black finish to it. And then the rest of the proposed fence, the yellow on here, that is proposed to be chain link. There is currently chain link there. The applicant wants to replace it with chain link. That requires a material variation, a variation from the material requirements. This is the material spec information that was in the packet that the applicant submitted. This is a photo on the left is what's existing. There were multiple photos in the packet. If the commission needs me to put up other photos, I can put the packet up. And then on the right, my understanding is that's what's proposed. That's like the spec or material type for what's proposed. Recommendation, commission should deliberate. This is it's a design review. It's not technically a public hearing. This is a public meeting for this type of request. And a fence variation, which is also a public meeting. Neither of these are public hearings. I can take questions, if any.
All right, let's start from my left. Mr. Mathis, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Kirch?
No questions.
Vice Chair?
No questions.
Mr. Hecht?
No questions.
What's adjacent to the chain link fence now?
Commercial. I can put up an aerial image.
Would you do that, please?
Actually, as you said that, I realized the one slide I may be missing was an aerial of the site. But fortunately, I do have.
I know there's public storage to the north and
Yeah.
a commercial building to the south, which I couldn't quite identify what it was.
This is north of 22.
Yeah, it's,
Between the train tracks and
Here we
the
go.
highway.
Right.
So this is the subject property here, this one where the mouse is. And then so to the west, you have Comment property and then railroad, and then there's a park. To the east, you have the highway, and then there is eventually residential use, and then there's commercial to the north and commercial to the south.
Looks like parking bays or some storage, yeah. Okay.
Is the petitioner here?
well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
So just so I'm clear, Carl, or well, I should say, Jackson, you have any questions? Sorry. Just so I'm clear, on page 20, for once I'm looking at the whole packet, on page 22, there's a rather grainy picture, I would say, of a fence. Is that supposed to be the ornamental fence?
Oh, yes, correct. That's what the applicant submitted. Oh, I got the wrong
Also,
thing.
it's so grainy. You can play with it.
Yeah, this, right?
Yeah, that.
So that's the,
Huh?
that's the spec
Page
type.
22, right there, that's it.
That's the spec type for what the applicant submitted. That is correct.
But you,
So
but
that's
it's
going
really
on-
hard to look at. But- So that's going on that L that faces that red L there,
Yep,
right?
That is correct.
And the existing chain link fence is where the yellow is, correct? And then it's just being replaced? Or are we adding to the yellow, adding to the existing chain link fence?
I believe that is essentially the case. I don't know if it overlaps
All right, so we're-
100%.
I'm
but it is
sure,
essentially
hopefully the
case.
petitioner is here and he
But we're,
or she can answer
we're
that.
replacing the chain link fence with.
Right,
their-
I just want to know whether we're adding more chain
I
link
see.
fence, right? So what's the variation from the fence code?
Material in chapter 173, chain link is not permitted for any.
Commercial use?
For any property that's not a single family use. It has to be, don't have the language in front of me, it's something that says ornamental metal.
Right,
powder
right.
coat black finish,
Okay,
or powder black
got
coat
it.
finish.
All right, thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Is the petitioner with us tonight? Want to come on up to the microphone if you don't mind? And just identify yourself and spell your last name for the minute taker, please.
Steve Ross, R-O-S-S.
And are you the property owner, or are you a contractor?
No, I will be the property owner.
Okay, so
We're
you're
waiting.
buying this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anything you want to add before we ask you a couple of questions?
No, ask away.
Mr. Kirch, you wanted to go, I know, so I'm going to recognize
No, this is-
Commissioner Kirch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to assume that you don't want to put the ornamental fence around for all of it because of the cost?
Actually, no, because it's not as durable. If you hit the ornamental fence with a car when they park, they're gonna dent it and ruin the fence. It's also less secure.
Well, okay, but our code doesn't really recognize that.
Okay? Yeah, I mean, that's up to you. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
So let me kind of build on what he's, you're gonna park vehicles against the fence, is that the idea?
Correct.
Well, to be honest, any fence that you park a vehicle against and you hit it, it's gonna get damaged. That's what appears to have happened to the existing fence, right? That it's in poor shape in part because people have hit it. That's why it's leaning, which it seems to be, at least in some of your pictures. So I understand that you might want to consider either putting some kind of whether it's wheel stops or something 3 feet away from that fence, so you're not running your cars or trucks into it, right? It's at the end of the day, it's your dollar, right? And my feeling is, as long as you maintain that fence and it doesn't wind up looking like the current fence looks, if you have to replace it every 6 months, that's up to you, right? But the
Correct.
city's going to, I'm assuming, make sure that it stays in relatively good shape, right? I mean, that's part of the property maintenance, part of the code that we don't talk about a whole lot.
Well, we want to keep it in good shape.
Yeah. Any other questions from us? Yes, Commissioner.
Sorry. So I see the red part is closest to 41, but then there's another yellow section that is facing the street on 41.
In the back here,
Yeah, how, is that visible from,
How far back is it?
Yeah.
Let's start with that question.
that's, I don't know. Let's see. That's got to be 200 feet, 150 feet back.
Do you have a gate there?
Yes, we're putting a gate there.
Both in the red area and in
That
the,
is correct.
okay.
Is it a manually operated gate? Like, does somebody have to get out of their car
The
and
front,
open the
main,
gate?
the main gate, which would be the
yellow one?
The yellow one is going to be electric, so it'd be automatic, and the one in the back, I'm sorry, the red one would be automatic,
Yeah.
and the yellow one would be manual.
So what are you gonna do? You're gonna open it up at the beginning of the day?
It
After
depends- it depends-
after everybody comes and goes? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, when you leave, you're gonna lock it
That
up?
would get locked. Yep.
Okay.
I would prefer to see anything facing the street to be to code, and then the areas that are along the property lines, and they seem to be facing other commercial properties that are, I think there's car bays
There's a public
Like
storage,
storage.
yeah.
that aren't high visibility places. I don't mind the chain link fence, but the areas that are visible from the street or passerbys, I would prefer to see that be meeting the minimum of the code, if that makes sense.
Carl, could you put up did you have a aerial, did you say?
Yes.
Can you throw that up there for a second? Because maybe we can define it a little better.
And here, I was just, I just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of the standards of approval for this type of request. I don't know if that's visible, but I need to zoom in on that. And then I can go to that area.
Please. Because I think what my colleague is getting to is perhaps we want it decorative all the way back to, let's say, the building line of the buildings surrounding it, right? So that somebody, the chain link part is not visible to somebody going down 41. Is that an accurate
Yeah, I mean,
assessment?
yeah, typically, even in other applications, you would typically see the visible portion, and then as it turns a corner or
Yeah.
it reduces from view, it can become,
Something else,
right.
right?
I would
I was
concur
looking
with
for the
that.
aerial, not the street view, but that's fine. Just because it looks like the building to the north is lines up pretty much with the subject property, but the building to the south is set back quite a bit more, right? So, we may be talking about bringing that back to the building line, I would think, so that somebody traveling northbound on 41 sees the decorative fence, not necessarily the chain link
That side
fence.
of the building doesn't begin until farther.
But,
That
Yeah.
is. The fence in the front is the decorative fence. The fence in the back.
no, I know, but here's what I'm saying. So where is the decorative fence on the south end there?
Is in the yellow. Way
That's
back there.
decorative, or is
No,
that?
that's chain link.
Right, so what goes from the chain link fence where the yellow is toward 41 on
Nothing.
that side?
Nothing. No.
Okay. All right, so there's no fence there.
So that
All right,
chain link
that
gate
makes
back, you
sense.
can hardly see from the highway.
That makes more sense to me then. Thank you, Jackson.
Right,
for
so that crossing
Making sure I
over,
know who knew that.
so the fence crossing, according to that drawing, if you put up the previous screen,
Which one?
that one right there. So it looks like,
It's at the back of their building almost.
right, that little bit that's crossing the driveway is behind the building that's next to it.
Yeah.
So the people in the parking lot of that building are not gonna be seeing, they're not gonna be seeing it, yeah.
Anything else? Yes,
Could you explain the reason why on that north end you have part of like about, I think it says, 30 feet of the classic fence that's in compliance and then the rest is chain link fence? Like, why not do all one or the other?
I would love to do all chain link, but I want to make it right so what you see from the highway is the decorative fence that's allowed.
Thank you.
anything else?
Just wanted to get it clear.
Any other questions? Yes, Council Liaison Lidauer.
How old is the current chain link fence?
Old,
Old.
no idea.
Okay.
50 years, I don't know.
So it held up for,
It's a great, yeah.
because it's a vast improvement, but I'm just curious how old it was, to your
Well-
earlier point.
You know, if something hits it, it's gonna start getting out of shape, right? I mean, so I'm taking Mr. Ross's word that he's going to be a good corporate citizen and make sure that it is, you know, if it comes into disrepair, he's gonna replace what needs to
You
come,
hit
right?
anything
He has
with a
to,
car,
right.
It's gonna.
It's gonna do, yeah, you hit the building, it's gonna get
Right.
damaged, right?
So I don't know that that's really what we're here to
No,
worry
Right.
about.
no, I'm just making sure.
What's in this
Commissioner,
building?
can you bend your?
Yeah.
Sorry, I got downstairs.
That's fine.
Sorry, I usually have a big voice, so. What's in the building now?
The building, the rear building has some storage.
It is a rear building.
The front building has a couple mechanics and glass company.
Okay, so I'm looking at the aerial and I'm not sure, I just was wondering if it says Jiffy Lube
Jiffy Lube.
or Jeff, no.
No,
It's
Jeff.
not
Lube.
Jiffy
Jeff-
Lube.
That's
Jeff
not
Lube.
Jiffy Lube, that tells you how much.
That guy's long gone.
He's gone, and then Inman Glass is still.
Inman Glass is still there.
And they're gonna stay there?
Inman Glass is gonna stay there. The
And
mechanics,
what,
the
you're
mechanics,
moving your
we're
business
moving,
in?
we're moving there. Yeah, we're getting out of the Briar Gate area.
I have a comment I could make, but I'm not going to. Worried about the neighborhood going to hell.
That's a different meeting.
All right,
So,
Anything else?
well, the only concern would be, and this is what we've talked about in the past, you know, are we setting some kind of precedent that now another person comes in and says, oh, well, you let them do it, you're gonna let me do it, and I know it's a little bit of, it's a case-by-case basis, but,
well, this is a unique situation in my mind because it is a highway commercial area. This is at the back of the property where people will not see it, right?
no, I agree with
If
these things.
somebody came along and said, I'm on Skokie Highway, and I have a train tracks behind me, and I don't have any residents behind me, I have, you know, a barrier behind me, so I wouldn't want to do it on the east side of the highway, but somebody on the west side of the highway came to us and said, I need to fence this off, I think, I wouldn't have a problem.
I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think in this case, it's design review and everyone is different, right?
Yeah,
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Ross. Do I have a motion to approve?
so moved.
Oh, gee, he beat you again. Okay, we'll go, Vice Chair Moore makes the motion to approve as submitted with the one condition, do we want to make the part facing 41 that's toward the back of the property where the gate is going to be, do we want that to be ornamental metal? Or are we okay with it being chain link?
I'm personally fine with chain link as presented, given the location.
Okay. Any other feelings on it? I know how you feel. She wants the ornamental metal, right? I mean, that's a hard call to me in general, because I think on one hand, there's the precedent that I worry about. That This
Right.
faces the street.
Right,
And so even though people, are traveling at a fairly high speed,
yeah.
they could possibly see it.
Well, anybody coming into the other businesses along there, or even that
They're gonna
building
see it.
themselves is gonna see it.
Come out, yeah, you can come up.
I just want to, I realize it's B3.
Yeah.
This is,
It's
I mean, this
industrial.
is industrial. This is not, you've got a self-storage and then you've got industrial, you said you've got mechanics in there and a glass company. You've got a used car lot on the other side. That's what's along that stretch of road. I don't even care if any of it's ornamental, to be honest with you. Chain link, I'd be okay with the chain link all the way around.
See, I always think about planning for the future, and when, if this area wanted to change or become something else or grow, there's an existing given infrastructure for change that motivates the change. And so I don't know who the tenant is today and how long they're gonna stay and where they're gonna be tomorrow. And so a permanent, something like a building material, like a fence, and they're asking for code review, I would rather have the visible elements meet the minimum of the code and give a variance for the areas that receive that.
Mr. Ross, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, the fence in the back, I mean, the other, if you pull up the Google Earth where you see where the other tenants are, the only people there's a parking lot back there.
Right.
For the body
No,
shop.
I get it.
So there's nobody going to there that's gonna see that unless they're in their backyard. You can't get to there unless you go through the middle of their buildings in their private
But
alleyway.
I think we're concerned about two things. I mean, and I understand where my colleague's coming from. It's not, unfortunately, it's not just you, right?
Sure.
It's somebody down the road. That's why I talk about precedents. And I think what she's concerned about, and rightfully so, is how do you, in this case, if we granted that, how do we deal with the next person who may have a drive-in business, where there's a lot more traffic coming in and going, let's say the car dealership, where we would want that to be a higher quality material because it was visible, even if it's just to their own customers, right? And I think that's the concern, hopefully I'm expressing it correctly. I think that's the concern that's being expressed, and like I said, this is a hard call for me personally, because I agree with it is an industrial area today. I will tell you, once upon a time, that the then community development director wanted to get all the car dealerships in Highland Park north of 22 on 41, right? Who's to say that doesn't happen down the line, or it could be something else? But we're charged with looking into a crystal ball and saying, what could this be? What could this mean for the future? And that's where I'm struggling with it. Yes, Corporation Counsel.
So this this commission is not held to precedent. It should aim for consistency.
Right.
But each property
I understand
is
that.
unique.
But
In the circumstance that you spoke of, if
Yeah.
there's a car dealership that wants to do the same thing, it sounds like it's a different circumstance. And so I don't think it would be inconsistent of you all to decide differently
Thank you.
in that case.
I just worry that somebody's gonna come in and say, well, you did it for them,
Well, they're going
do
to.
it for us. We know that,
But-
right? But we have to have good reasoning as to, I think we have to have a good solid reason to say, this is a unique case, yours is a different case,
Right.
and this is why we're doing it.
The other
We've done that. We've done
thing
it.
is,
I think one of the other things too, I respect what you're both saying about, if
I haven't
something changes
decided what
over
I'm
there.
doing, so.
if somebody's gonna come in and do what you're proposing, putting in a big car dealership there, they're gonna do what the Exchange did. They're gonna bulldoze the entire area and build, I mean, look what that was
Right,
before
right.
they came
I
in.
agree.
This fence isn't gonna make a difference.
And I think
One
that
way or
this,
another.
this precedent, this, the
Condition.
little piece we're talking about is so far back from the street
Okay.
that it seems to me to kind of be difficult to consider it part of the streetscape at all.
So I hear that, what I hear is the motion will be to recommend, or not recommend, to approve as submitted, correct? Motioner? Motioner was here.
Oh,
Is that what you're looking for?
I can see it both ways. I
See,
think it's,
that's what-
I think it's cleaner if we make it be ornamental on both sections that are
Facing the
facing
street.
the street.
So that's what
Can I
you
say
want to make the motion for.
Can I say something?
I'll get you.
That is what I would make the motion for, is that it's ornamental in both of those east-facing, street-facing sections.
And who's seconding that
He
motion?
seconded.
But I don't think he agrees with
Oh.
that.
I didn't,
Okay,
that's
so-
not what I was
So-
thinking.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded. Mr. Ross, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, the other issue is with the ornamental fence, as I said earlier, is much less secure than the chain link fence. Being that that fence is set so far back, that's an easy break-in point for someone to jump over that fence.
And why don't you tell us, since I see it on your shirt,
Okay.
what your business is?
We're in electronic security, so we're not gonna have, I'm not gonna be in the paper that somebody broke into my parking lot, my cars, take the catalytic converters, that happens all the time on the highway.
Right.
There's a wire that goes through the chain link fence that it can tell when someone is jumping over the fence or rattling the fence. Because the other fence is more solid, that technology does not work in that kind of fence. That's the big advantage for us for the chain link.
All right, well, that would have been good information to have at the
Okay,
beginning.
well, you want to amend your
I will
motion?
amend my motion to return it to what is pictured here with only the red L-shaped portion, the northeast corner would be ornamental, and then the rest of it can be chain link for
Hold on.
security.
Do you accept the amendment or not?
I'm not going to second it, but I'll accept it.
Well, that means it gets it on the table, right? You've seconded it, and that's why I'm looking at you to say, if you'll accept that amendment. You don't have to vote for it, but, it would get it on the table. Otherwise, we can withdraw the motion.
No, I think
No,
if,
we'd have to
if
vote
it's
on
a
it?
friendly amendment,
Yes.
but if it's not accepted, correct me if I'm wrong, not accepted by the second, we have to vote on the amendment.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not accepting that?
You don't have to.
We never
You don't
had,
have to.
I'm not in the security business, but I also find,
That's not our.
and maybe this story is not relevant, but I worked for the city of Chicago, and the Federal Reserve wanted to put bollards completely around the building in 1996, 1997 for security reasons, and they put a bollard in the middle of the curb cut so that people with wheelchairs cannot use that curb cut appropriately and have to go around the street. And I was personally told for security reasons that that bollard had to be there. So it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off of security, which is always flashed as you're going to cause security problems by following code and rules, or you could have followed the code and rules and made an accessible curb cut for everybody to follow. So I have a hard time having security be a reason to not follow code. Code says it should be an ornamental fence. There should be really substantial reasons for it not to follow code. I haven't really heard them. This fence is as secure as whether it's a wobbly chain link fence that has an electrical wire in it. It's a more solid fence. The fence is there to keep people out, and you could put other technology like security cameras that alert you if somebody jumps your fence immediately. It's just, I don't buy it.
Okay.
And so
We're gonna vote on the motion as originally proposed, which is to have it be because the friendly amendment was not accepted, as a ornamental fence facing the right way. Is that, or the right of way? So is that a voice vote or a roll call, sir?
This is a roll call.
Okay, would you, huh?
Hold on, what's the motion that's on
The motion is to approve it
With the
as shown, with the exception of all sides facing Route 41 being ornamental
Including
fence.
at the back.
Including at the
Okay, that's
back,
what I thought.
right? So
And
let's
so
call,
just to be clear, this is the design review as well as the variation.
correct.
This is all
I
together.
believe. Is that what your understanding will be? Doesn't matter. It's gonna fail. So say yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then you understand. So it's both the variation and
Yes.
that we're gonna vote on right now. Okay.
Are we proposing an amendment to be voted on first? or-
Okay, so let me ask you, okay, I'm trying to remember my Robert's rules.
I would just say then if the second, does it fails to get a
Right.
second, ask for another second.
That's
Or you vote
Can I
whether or
do
not
that,
the friendly amendment.
Marcus?
That's why I said withdraw your
Can we do that,
second and
Marcus?
ask for second.
Let's just
Well, I
take,
asked about withdrawing the motion, and was told I couldn't,
You don't
so,
need to do that.
let's take it one step at a time.
Yes.
So, Vice Chair made a motion.
right,
It was
second.
seconded, but there was a misconception as to what
I don't-
she was.
I don't think there was a misconception.
And
I
so there was.
I think what it was after hearing more information, she decided to change the motion.
Can I just
Well,
withdraw?
actually,
So
Then-
that's why I
then it
asked if
does
you
I
could
don't think
withdraw.
you can do that. Actually, you can't amend your own motion.
So.
Okay.
So
Someone
what-
else
You
would have
would
to propose.
withdraw the
friendly
motion
amendment.
and then motion again.
Well,
Let's-
no, we have a motion then that's on the floor that's been seconded.
You can't
Yes.
withdraw it.
Yeah, I know.
Right,
So that's why I thought we'd vote on that motion. If it fails, then we'll vote on a
we
different
can
motion.
do it that way,
Right.
or as,
Or-
Commissioner Heck, we can,
or we-
vote to amend the motion.
We
on
could
the
do
table.
that too, right? So which way, I think it's gonna be cleaner. Let's just vote on the motion as we have, and then we'll make another motion if that fails. Call the roll.
And this is, just to be clear, this is a motion that to accept this, except for this part here.
Correct,
the
being
highway,
ornamental,
needs
that
to
will
also be the same materials.
be ornamental
It's
material.
Done right now, just to
Yes.
make that clear to all the commissioners.
Yes. Is to me, like mud. All right, call the roll.
Commissioner Arnold,
Yes.
Commissioner Mantis,
Nay.
Commissioner Kirsch,
Nay.
Commissioner Heck,
Nay.
Vice Chair Moore,
Nay.
Chairman Hainsworth.
Nay.
The nays have it.
Motion
the
fails.
fails.
Do I have another motion? Somebody want to make another motion?
I move that we make a motion to approve the application that's submitted.
That would be both design review and the variation.
Yes. It's a
Seconded.
consolidated application, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, then yes.
So it's motion made by Commissioner Heck, seconded by Commissioner Mantis. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Arnold,
Nay.
Commissioner Mantis,
Aye.
Commissioner Kirsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Heck,
Aye.
Vice Chair Moore,
Aye.
and Chairman Hainsworth.
Aye, 5 ayes, 1 nay. The motion passes. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry we had to,
Thank you.
it was a little messy.
Learn some stuff.
It was a little messy. I'm not going to get out of here in an hour.
Oh, well.
Next item of business is continuation of public hearing 2023-PUD-003 and 2023-SUP-001 for a special use permit in the nature of a preliminary and final plan development and special use permit to establish a motor vehicle washing facility, otherwise known as car wash, land use with the design review, sign package, and zoning and city code variations at 1970 First Street. And this will be to recommend, to adopt findings of fact, recommending this to the city council, but we had some issues we wanted to have addressed as part of that, right? Mr. Burhoff,
That is correct.
you have a brief presentation for us?
All right, so this slide is old. This has now been reused 2 or 3 times because
We're sustainable.
the project, the project is still essentially the same, but obviously with some changes that I'll go over. But it's still a project to renovate and reuse the existing buildings, a car wash, install outdoor payment kiosks, install outdoor vacuums, and other accessory changes to the site. There are 3 action items before the commission. One is the SUP in the nature of a preliminary and final PUD. The PDC is a recommendation body. The other is the SUP, that stands for Special Use Permit, to establish a conditional use, the motor vehicle washing facility, which we just colloquially refer to as the car wash. The PDC, that stands for Plan and Design Commission. It's a recommendation body. And then there's design review with variations. The PDC is the decision maker. And PUD stands for Plan Development. Okay, so the variations have been modified, I believe. Yeah, so these are the same three that were on there 2 weeks ago, except they've been reduced within the scope of those three. So for the lighting, it still needs the bug variation. The plan the applicant submitted indicates that the light that needs the bug, that doesn't meet the bug rating, and it has a phrase on there, it states 80% dimmed. And then it still needs the average to the minimum uniformity ratio of 4.36 as proposed, which went up, I believe, well, I have it in my other slide. Then sign variations, they've been reduced. I'll just run through that in another slide. And then the vacuum clean, the outdoor vacuum cleaners, that needs a variation to that section I quoted. They have been reduced from 7 to 5. Okay, broad revisions, and I have it on the next slide here, but the ADA space was modified, was revised. So this is the ADA space now. Turf barrier area was added along the east property line along First Street. The applicant added a sign and a painted indicator indicating right out only out of the car wash. And then, yeah, there's a change to that sidewalk at the corner there, which I think was a Public Works comment. Lighting, so broadly similar to what was gone over 2 weeks ago. The foot candle average to minimum uniformity ratio is still a variation, supposed to be 4 to 1. I think it's 4.36 to 1 is what's proposed now. It went up slightly from the 4.16. Then, as I already stated, the bug rating, the applicant has a statement in there, plans to be dimmed to 80%. Landscaping, so the 2 trees along the north, those were still there. The applicant added this kind of turf barrier area, which was also a comment from Civil Tech as well. Civil Tech wanted or recommended barriers so that vehicles maneuvering on site would be more constrained from just spilling over onto the sidewalk. Okay, sign review. So the lighting, all the new internally illuminated signs that weren't otherwise allowed, that has been struck, and exterior illumination is proposed. So that's, originally there were 3 identification signs, 2 on either side of the vertical wall element, then 1 along the east facade. The identification sign along the east facade was just struck, and the 2 along the vertical architectural element are no longer proposed to be internally illuminated. That gets me, so that's a reduction in variation. Number 2, originally 3 identification signs had been proposed. Now that's down to 2. That one on the east facade along the north side was struck, as where it's just the 2 along the vertical architectural wall element that are proposed. The allowed area of signs was clarified. The identification signs are within their maximum allowed limit, so there's no relief to the identification sign area limit. The on-site informational directional signs, there were 5. They're still larger than what they're supposed to be in the code, though those were reduced from the September 19th meeting. I had those numbers in the report. The height variation was eliminated because on the south, again, that south vertical wall element, they were lowered so it's no higher than the roof parapet, and so that complies. And then just as a reminder, they also do propose the 2 identification signs on what is already an existing non-conforming pole sign that is internally illuminated, and they verify that's not going to be expanded. That's already there. That's already being used. That is non-conforming rights. Public benefit, that hasn't changed. That's from the prior slide. Public Works Department. So there was talk about the trench drain, and this is what the Public Works Department says. They say, regarding the trench drain outside the tunnel being tied into sanitary, that shall not be allowed. There must be a water oil separator put in prior to connecting the city's storm sewer. So that's Public Works comment on that. And then, oh yes, so this was one thing that I noticed. I can't remember if it was in the report or not, but I know there was a comment from the commission regarding materials proposed. for the bottom, and I don't know if that was missed or not, but I did catch it, and I did raise it to the applicant's attention a day or two ago. And so, again, I'm not sure if that was in the
Says
report, but
brick on the bottom.
well, right, and I had looked at that too, but I just wanted to bring that up and then just to make sure that was an element that was covered in the discussion. Findings of fact, okay, I hope that's readable, I should maybe put it on 2 slides, I'm sorry, but the top one, so exterior lighting and sign lighting shall be limited to the hours of operation except for exterior lighting related to life or safety. Essentially, the applicant has indicated compliance with that, and of course, that'll be a condition of approval should this move forward. Applicant to provide infrared heater near exit of car wash tunnel. My recommendation would be the applicant indicate that on their site plan, but again, that can be a condition of approval moving forward, if this does move forward. Another condition of approval is the car wash exit shall be right out only. I will draw to the commission's attention civil text comments on that, which I think I have on my next slide. That may or may not be revised at the commission's discretion, but that is in the findings of fact. Actually, these are copied and pasted from the findings of fact in the packet. No off-site stacking is permitted, and the police department may suspend operations if there becomes a stacking or backup situation, or other situation making adjacent street or sidewalk operation by the public dangerous. I relayed that comment to the police, did not hear any concern. Hours of operation are to be limited to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The applicant indicates compliance, and again, if this moves forward, that would be a condition of approval. No store and no sales allowed that require customers to enter the building. No full-service car wash where patrons exit vehicles as part of the car wash operation. Though I believe, just to be clear, that excludes the vacuum. I do want to point that out just to make sure everyone understands that, because obviously patrons have to get out of their car to get in and vacuum it. And then there was the noise level. Noise level must comply with section 150.607 of city code. And then staff to be on site at all hours of operation to direct traffic. And then the applicant either indicated compliance to these in their narrative or made revisions to their plans to indicate compliance.
The one exception was about the, and I think it's up there, no store and no sales allowed that require customers to enter the building. It originally said park and enter. I think that hopefully, and they wanted to make sure we were clear that they could bring something to the car without somebody going in, right? Okay.
And if these need to be revised, by all means, Chair, let me know.
No, I think hopefully this covers that to their satisfaction. Questions of staff?
Oh, I have one more on
Yep,
civil tech, my
sorry.
apologies. So civil tech did indicate, based on the revision, they did request a data-driven analysis regarding queuing of cars on the First Street. In the previous findings of fact, staff, thought part of that could be solved by just indicating, no off-site stacking is allowed. Now, the applicant's traffic consultant did already respond to this, and it is in the packet. This was posted yesterday. Obviously, civil tech hasn't had a chance to review that. So civil tech would either be able to review that if this coming back to the commission, or if the commission is satisfied with the conditions in place, civil tech would review that before this goes to council. And then otherwise, civil tech, these other comments, civil tech, they indicate the closure of the 2 driveways improves safety, and they stated why in their report. No expected significant conflicts at the intersection. Again, I'm summarizing civil tech's report. As for the restricting right-out only traffic, which was a condition on the prior one, civil tech stated that's not recommended, and then indicated multiple reasons in their report. These are old. My apologies, Chair. No, I'm finished.
problem.
Thank you.
Questions for staff? We'll start with Commissioner Arnold.
Can you go back to the traffic pattern? And so can you just explain to me where a car comes in and then where they exit the property?
Yeah, my understanding is that they enter here, and then they would go through, and then they would exit here, or if they wanted to vacuum, they would turn back into the property, use the vacuums, and then they could also exit out here. That's my
Did we
understanding.
say that the approach on Elm was an exit only? I didn't recall that we had said that, so I thought perhaps they can come in that way as well.
No,
Was it always exit
was
only?
always-
Okay.
It was last time presented. it
Then
was
we
exit
sure as
only.
heck don't have a lot of stacking there.
No, because that was the concern, is if you have all the stacking along the vacuums, and how are
How
people
they
gonna get in and out?
You're right. Thank you for refreshing my memory.
So you enter on Elm and exit then on.
No, you enter
First.
on
Enter on
First
First.
and you exit on Elm.
Yeah, that's right, you enter on First Street, and then as you go through, if you only want the car wash, you would exit here onto Elm, but you do have the option on-site to swing around on-site, then either use the vacuums or not use the vacuums, and then you can also exit out back onto.
Anybody
Well-
who's looking to turn left is gonna go
Right, anybody
Out
who
of
would need
there.
to go eastbound on Elm Street would want to go out there.
and come back down, or
But
even
if
if
you
they're going
wanted,
north.
you could take a left on Elm. Is that what Civil was saying, that they don't want to restrict it to a right-only exit on Elm?
Yeah, so Civil Tech's comment was when they, when the car wash, yeah, correct, when a car is exiting the car wash, staff put it to them, staff specifically put to Civil Tech, do you think this or this should or should not be right out only? And Civil Tech indicated, no, that they would not recommend that this be limited to right out only.
Because,
Well, that's in the report, I can certainly, read that off.
They felt there wasn't enough traffic and that the traffic was slow-moving enough that we didn't need,
And people won't follow it anyway.
That's right.
well, right, and people won't follow it anyway.
Without a physical deterrent such as a barrier, median, drivers will disobey left turn signage when there is no perceived reason not to turn left. See, they've been working in Highland Park quite a bit.
They know us.
all right, can I ask another question?
Sure,
Sorry.
floor is
The
yours.
elevations that show the illuminated signage and the changes to the existing building?
There's no illuminated signage anymore, first of
Well,
all.
they will be.
They're illuminated, but
Exterior.
it's exterior illumination, it's not interior,
Um,
internal.
Can I see it?
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
Actually, I have that question too, that
How's it gonna be illuminated?
sign number 18, is that no longer going to be internally illuminated?
Which one's 18?
That's the post sign out
No,
here
it's
in the
gonna
middle?
still be internally illuminated.
Oh, well, the 18, sign 18, yes, that is the existing,
Existing,
pre-existing
it's
non-conforming pole
Well, I will
sign.
have a question about that.
This
It's my
one right
turn.
here, correct.
so can you show where they are on the building, like the three-dimensional?
It would be page 50, right?
Is it-
Yeah, I think you guys scroll the other direction and
You
you'll
want
be,
page 50 on the packet, I know.
somebody did a lot of drawings on this thing.
Yes, they did.
Hey, well, this is the.
There's a perspective, Carl, that looks like a bird's eye
Perspective view
looking
6.
looking from the corner,
Okay,
right?
so-
That's probably the best
Yeah.
one.
Okay,
There's
so
the one that's
the
even
blue,
higher than
the blue painted area with the red car in front of it, that's not illuminated, that's just paint?
This one?
No.
No, the other one.
With the red, go down First Street there.
Right.
See the red car? No, see the red car?
That one.
There.
It's
Okay.
just a change in color on the material.
And then what's the sign that's on Elm Place? What is the arrow pointing to, and is that illuminated? What is that sign?
It's an enter sign.
That sign,
Yeah,
There.
what is that?
which makes no sense if you can't enter there.
I took that as a rendering, let me go back to the.
That sign there, where that arrow is, I think that's a sign. I don't know.
Well, I'll let the applicant respond, if I'm remembering, well, I don't want to misquote the applicant. I'll let the applicant respond, if I remember, were they stating that that's like the one to go around the corner to go on First Street? I don't remember any more of their testimony from 2 weeks ago.
And, and so we have this, I mean, how tall is the waterway sign in the front? 2 stories tall, 12 feet high,
this one
13
here?
feet high? Yeah, what is that?
Well, I can tell you what the height limit is in the code. The height limit in the code is that it has to be below the roof line. And so originally it stuck up above, and now it's in line with it. But the actual height would be on these elevation plans.
My point is that I think that sign will be visible whether you're coming from Elm or you're coming from First.
That's the,
And the second sign, that's on First Street, seems unnecessary.
That sign
Talking
number
about the
18?
existing pylon sign?
I mean, that waterway sign is going to grab your attention.
Okay. We'll let the applicant respond at the appropriate time. Anything else?
No, I mean, and the bricks being painted white? the brick buildings painted white, or what is?
I think it's EFS.
It's EFS being placed over the existing
Yeah.
brick building?
For which facade?
For the, I think,
Facing First Street.
Oh, facing-
First and Elm, right?
Oh, so this is, yeah, this
And-
would be the, oh, sorry.
Yeah, but let's put it this way, the south, the east, and the north elevations are the ones
Are going to be covered
That are-
in EFS.
that, well, I think that's the point, but, right? Is that what they're doing, Carl?
Right, that's right, according to this, it's white ephes and.
And then thin brick below.
Right, and face brick,
And
right.
some kind of brick on those columns there that you see, you know, like where the, I don't know whether they're windows or what those were. At one time they were signs. To the left of that blue block that you have your hand on, you know, so to the left, go to the left. There, thank you, Gail. Yeah, is that brick?
Yes,
What is that?
thin face
Okay.
brick, thin face brick, silver
Okay.
band, white reflective ephes.
All right,
Okay.
anything else?
I have a better understanding,
Okay,
that's all.
Commissioner Hecht.
I don't have any questions.
Vice Chair.
So I have a few questions for staff. One is, so this pylon sign, sign number 18, we say that that's a pre-existing lighted sign. But my understanding is that because this has not been a car wash for several years, the pre-existing condition no longer exists because this is a brand-new PUD?
Well, the sign code has their own special non-conforming regulations. So in our code, Article 9 regulates non-conforming uses and non-conforming structures, but the sign code has its own special non-conforming regulations in Article 20 of the city code.
Okay. So although it was a car wash before and it wants to be a car wash again, so much time has elapsed, we have to do a whole new PUD to consider it as a new car wash. So I guess I don't understand why the sign isn't considered in the same way. And if that's because the sign code is very different, then I guess that's the way it is. I just wanted to understand.
I mean, I'd have to re-review that section of code to follow up with you, but my off-the-cuff response was just that land uses and structures are non-conforming land uses and structures are regulated.
Okay.
That was, but yeah, I would have to re-reflect on the code.
All right, that's my only question for staff.
Okay.
Well, actually, I don't know, maybe not. If we go back to that page 50, so there's two other signs.
That's the aerial.
Okay, well, that one
Right
works
there,
right there, that works there. So sign number 12 is the one that says enter right there on the left corner. Is that in the right of way or is that on the company property?
Well, yeah,
Be
so.
the right away.
That's a rendering, and this did come up 2 weeks ago, and I remember the chair stated specifically to the applicant that regardless of where these depicted on renderings, they cannot be within the city's right of way.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because obviously the drawing hadn't changed since the last time we had the packet.
If it's not on the right of way, then they still are asking for that sign, which I think they're gonna have to explain why it makes sense to even have that sign there.
I agree.
It's gotta be protected. You can't just leave it out in the middle of a parking lot and expect it not to get nailed.
Right.
You
And
know, to be
then
honest. It won't be there very long, let's put it that way.
that problem goes away.
Yes, because the sign is gonna go away, because somebody's gonna hit it.
Right. Okay, and then I'll just point out that sign number 9, which is supposed to be pointing to the entrance, is not, it got moved in the rendering, but it's not pointing in the right direction.
Which one's?
It's on page 48. And it's supposed to be pointing to the, that one right there on the right-hand side. That's now pointing to the right of the entrance to the
yeah.
driveway, and now I would be a
Now
very
you're going
confused
to
driver.
Isaac and.
Isaac and
Moishes.
Moshe's or
Yeah,
McDonald's.
Moishes.
So,
Okay, there's some things to work out there.
okay, that was all I had.
Commissioner Kirch.
I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but it seemed to me that when I read the Civil Tech report about better separation and barriers between the vehicular use areas and the pedestrian areas, I don't think they had in mind 12-inch high delicate flowers.
Well, do you mind if I build on that?
I don't mind at all.
The question is, you've described it a couple of times as turf, right? So I'm thinking it's just grass, but yet the renderings show some kind of shrubbery or foliage there, but we don't have a landscape plan that tells us what it is. Right? I mean, am I misinterpreting this, Carl? I mean, it may be a question that the petitioner is going to have to answer as to what it is that they were planning for that.
That's packet
For that
page
strip.
50.
Yeah. There's some lovely little, some kind of bush or something there, right? Is that right? I mean, that's where you were going with this, right?
Right, that doesn't, I don't see a
I
protection.
mean, I don't even know what it is, so I didn't see a landscape plan anywhere in the packet, so I don't know that, I don't know that we have any information on that.
Well, Chair, if I may respond.
Yes, obviously.
So the applicant did submit a revised landscaping plan, but I concur with what the commission stated. So the landscaping plan that was submitted,
Where is the landscaping?
it would be.
For me being,
Page, oh geez, I can barely read
Idiot.
this. Does that say 45?
I have 45 as another rendering.
It must be
40.
page 39 or 40. It must
30,
be 40.
38.
38?
38 to 40 looks like. the
Okay,
proposal.
I got 38. And again, it does not tell me anything about the landscaping.
So I think the
in that
reason,
area.
I think the reason I
Even though
called
it
it,
is a landscaping plan, it seems to just be,
Just those trees.
I mean, that's the only
Right.
thing that's noted on the landscape plan. There's nothing noted out in that that
Right.
adjacent to the right-of-way area.
the reason I called it turf area is just because that's in the legend. I thought it
That's
corresponded.
why I think it's just grass,
Right.
right?
Right. Correct. And their landscape, correct. The landscaping
I mean,
plan
their
does
plan
not call
schedule
out.
only talks about 2 trees. So I have to assume it's all grass, and I don't know even if there's a curb along that grass, but we'll get to that, right? Mr. Mantis, anything else, Mr. Kirsch?
No.
Okay. Mr. Mantis, anything?
Nothing.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Not to seem really daft about it, but there's 2 curb cuts there now, and they're being replaced with just that one big old curb cut in the middle of the property.
There's 3 or 4
There's a
curb.
bunch of curb
This-
cuts there, but along First Street, let's look along
I'm-
First Street. Do we know how wide that remaining curb cut is?
Well, I need to sit down for that because I need to go back to the prior
Okay.
attachments to
Sorry,
compare. Oh, no.
I hate to do this to you, Carl, but
I-
it looks really wide. I think that's where
Yeah,
Commissioner Arnold's going here.
I'm not
You mean
sure
on
if that's
First?
just a regular
Yeah.
old.
Well, it's a two-way.
Well, I get it, but you know what? A 2-way curb cut only has to be 35 feet, maybe. I don't know how big this is.
Looks like they have
It's
they
existing,
have
I get
a
it.
island in the middle?
Yeah, is there an island in the
It
middle?
looks
I don't
like
know.
it. Let me get rid of my,
Has to be a-
Let's look at the aerial.
Same with the one on Elm Place. It's hard to see where the,
it's on the rendering on page,
Well, I want to look at I'm going to look at
yeah, page 41.
okay, I'm going to look at what's there now.
Oh.
It says it's existing to remain. If my computer lets me, it did.
that's not a curb cut, that's like,
Carl, packet page 41
loading
might be a
thing.
good indication of the size of these curb cuts.
This is what,
So this is the
17.
survey that was originally submitted. And so I'm hoping this should indicate what the existing curb cuts are. So you have the one up here along First Street, and then the one down here in the southeast corner that they're proposing to close up. Actually, this would probably be the best way,
Oh,
the
Green Bay Road one first.
Google Street View.
Well, that's what I was trying to go to.
So these are the existing curb cuts on First.
Oh, that's a power line.
Huh?
are they,
Oh, there's a power pole in the
Yeah.
middle.
Powerful.
Lovely.
Yeah, there's the shadow of it right there.
Nice.
Does that respond to the question I have?
The one on,
To me,
it's large,
Make me
and then the
happy.
one on, both in and out, and then the little island at the pole. It's a lot of curb cut, it's not a standard sized curb cut, and then the one facing Elm Place is, per the drawings being shown, is the size of the width of the building? I mean, that's like 2-3 cars going out at once?
that curb cut is shared actually with the shops on Elm, if you look at the overhead.
Not.
Could you go?
Bollards in between.
There's bollards, but the curb cut itself is
We're
wide,
just talking about the curb cut on this property.
right. So
Could you
half of
go
that
down
curb
street,
cut, if you look at the aerial,
Street view?
is on this property. It's really two curb cuts that are located next to each other,
So-
right?
So the one at the
There's a hydrant there.
very corner, and then the.
That's
hydrant-
going away. The one on the corner goes
And
away.
then the hydrant, and then the existing one, it's like, in the drawing, it says wide as the building is. It just is much bigger than a standard curb cut even. for-
It really isn't, because that building isn't that wide, right? Number one, and it looks wider because, as I said, you see where the bollards are there,
Yeah,
all right? That's one curb cut, from that hydrant all the way to where you see the green area to the west. That's a single curb cut. It's split between the shops on Elm and this property,
okay.
which is one of the reasons we're concerned about it.
Can I
Jackson,
add
you
on
want
to
to?
this for 1 second?
Sure.
First off, I'd just like to point out that the enter sign that we've been talking about, pointing
Right.
around the corner, is almost in the exact spot of the fire hydrant.
Right. Well, it can't
Um,
be there anyway.
And could you pull up the survey map for 1 second? I just wanted to see, yeah, so it looks like the current curb cut, okay, so so it looks like what we have there is that the curb cut the island where that hydrant is going to stay intact and be filled into the right. I just want to make sure
Right.
that curb
That's
cut
the
didn't end
idea.
up widening itself.
No.
All right, that's all I have on that matter.
Yes, Carl.
I just wanted to point out too that I rely on the Public Works Department to review curb cuts and right-of-way changes, and Public Works did have a chance to respond to their most recent revisions, and they stated that the engineering division has no further comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't have any questions for staff. I'm going to have some questions and comments for the petitioner.
I have one final question.
Yes, Jackson.
Just to be clear, the applicant said that they're reducing the number of vacuums from 7 to 5, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I just want to get
Thank
that
you.
all in shape.
And of
More
course,
questions for the applicant.
of course, any recommendation goes, the plans become part of eventually the ordinance that is adopted, should one be adopted on this. So with the plans being submitted, that becomes part of the ordinance for this or any other SUP and PUD. All right, can you do a little bit of clarification, Mr. Goldman, and just, you've been sworn previously, correct? And just state your name and spell it for the last name for the minute taker, if you don't mind.
Yeah, good evening, good to see you all again. Michael Goldman, Vice President, General Counsel, Waterway Gas and Wash, Goldman, Goldman. And I'm really here just to answer questions.
So I heard a bunch of them. So let's start with, let's start with that wonderful floating sign on Elm Place. Where is it and why is it?
Well, I'll tell you both things. It is obviously going to be on our property, not on the right of way, and we'll put it there. And, obviously a rendering can be a little deceiving, as we all know. And why it is, I think, is actually quite important. We had an entry on Elm prior, and we are telling people that the existing curb cut on Elm is exit only. So I don't want people coming into my exit, and I want customers to know where to go to get into our property. So we changed it from car wash to entry, as per the request. And we did make as you all pointed out in the rendering, the other sign I told them to swing the arrow the other way, and I guess they swung it further than I meant, and in our rush, I didn't get it to exactly perfect, but obviously it'll be pointing towards that curb cut. And one of the Civil Tech comments in all of their reports has been the importance of wayfinding, and this is wayfinding. So we do think that's quite important.
So how are you going to protect that sign from potential damage? Because it's pretty narrow, making that turn and getting around there if you come in 2 or 3 feet with a sign.
Yeah, we'll use a bollard if we need to, and we'll place it on the final civil plan in a place that it's protected. I mean, we've put up signs like this in many places.
I don't love bollards personally, but we'll talk about that. All right, let's see. Then there was the question about how are these signs going to be illuminated if you are not internally illuminating those signs?
So my intention would be to have them externally illuminated, either with wall washers going down or lit from the ground up. And we have actually spoken to staff a little bit about that and looking for some clarification in the code, but it'll be an externally illuminated lights.
And that will need to be shown on the plans before you take them to city council, just to be really clear, because city council's going to want to know that information. All right. Let's see, what other questions were there? Am I missing? Mr. Kirsch, you?
I just want to add, back to that enter arrow. I mean, we used to have, exit only painted on there, and the enter people could think that means enter right there, pay no attention to the arrow itself.
But we do have a do not enter sign. And
It's not on, that's not on the
But
rendering
I
either.
think
It's supposed to be
where
that.
perhaps,
Oh,
what I think we're suggesting perhaps is instead of having an arrow facing Elm Place, that you put a do not enter on that sign and just have your arrow pointing, your people exiting the car wash to the left, so they can understand that that's the wayfinding that way, right? Does that make sense?
But if we put an exit over the exit of
I
the,
think that's gonna be pretty obvious.
I know, that's true.
Come on.
I know, well,
Even for Highland Park, I think that's going to be obvious. What else am I missing, gang, that we need clarification on?
Turf.
Thank you.
So
How are you treating that? And let me preface it by
Yes.
my comment on this. You have done absolutely the bare minimum of what you were asked. And I don't think personally, I'm not satisfied with it. I think though that area could be bigger. I particularly think the crosshatched area where, that's just to the left or to the north technically of your employee parking is a excellent opportunity to get some additional landscaping in there, as is the island at the end of the employee parking area. And I just think, personally, I think it should have been, I thought we were pretty clear. We were looking for something a little more enhanced with this when we sent you away 2 weeks ago. And I can't speak for the rest of the commission. I'm pretty disappointed with what I saw. And in fact, I actually sketched something up in my office today, but left it unfortunately at home. And, I would have hoped that you would have done better, because I just think this is pretty minimal. So tell me how you're going to make that better by treating that quote unquote turf area with a little more landscaping and a little less grass.
So I'm sorry you feel like we did the bare minimum. I think we've worked really hard from the beginning to where we are right now, and I appreciate your comment though. But you had said 3 to 5 feet is what you said, so that's what we got in, because we've got cars exiting, we've got cars backing up. This was the most I could get in.
Okay.
If the request is to have some additional shrubbery, even though that's not what the forestry comment has said all along, I'm happy to put in some additional low shrubs. I'm not going to put in.
No, I know you're not gonna
A
put
row of
trees.
arborvitae's,
No,
because
that's
that would be ridiculous.
No, I'm not asking you to do
But
that.
I'm very happy to put in a row of
And
low
then
shrubs.
what about creating land, why do you need to just stripe the area, let's say to the south of your vacuum, south of that handicap spot, and then not do the painted, and why do you just need to paint a stripe along that island on the southern part of the site there where people are coming through to go to the vacuums?
So when we needed to reorient that to create the wider space for the ADA spot, it just sort of swung things around. I am happy, and, obviously we responded to as many things as we thought was appropriate, but I'm happy to expand the, some landscape into that corner near the entry where we're showing striping. That's fine. And as far as that other striping spot where the former ADA spot was, just the same question is trying to create as much space for the cars that are leaving, since we are, the people who would have been going left, who now want to go back down to First Street. We want to just make that as easy as possible.
Well,
To put in a small landscape
Yeah, I mean,
close to that,
to me, it
to the
looks-
building, I'm happy to do
It
that.
looks like, to me, that's a prime thing. Is the new landscaping area along First Street going to have a curb along it to keep cars from jumping it? Or is it just level with the pavement?
Oh, no, certainly there'll be a curb.
Okay. All right. What else? Anybody else have stuff?
So I'm concerned about the sidewalk that runs along Elm Place and how it bleeds right onto that
Pavement.
exit pavement that's swinging around up First Street, and there's nothing to separate the sidewalk from the driveway parking lot.
You
So
understand what,
look at
Oh, I
page,
do, yes.
and I
could we put curb along there?
think that's
right?
page 46
Or 50.
or 50.
It's,
And I thought Civil Tech had something to say about that too.
probably. So, that where it says to self-serve, go back up a second, it's probably easier. So I think where she's talking about is that.
No,
Oh,
go
go
up.
up. So
Right
see where
there.
it says to self-serve there, Carl? I think we're talking about that
That
stretch
stretch of sidewalk.
of sidewalk.
Yeah, right there.
Right there
There's no protection for
for pedestrians.
for the pedestrians. And, we do want to listen to our public and the people who have come here to express concerns about safety, and that would seem to be a really obvious safety issue.
I think that's part of my concern with the size of that curb cut, especially being adjacent to an existing curb cut for the existing property next to it, is that you've lost public sidewalk for how many feet?
Yeah, we
mean,
don't know
that's-
how big that curb cut is.
There's no public sidewalk there currently. I don't know where you're saying that we lost.
Well, I think the question is that,
Fair
I think the point probably is better stated, a couple things. First of all, if it's that wide, people are going to want to drive into it regardless of how we sign it, to be honest, right? I think that's one point that I think has been a concern. I saw Student Commissioner Roberts kind of indicating that when I was saying it, right? So that's one thing. And this is an area where students do walk from the elementary school in particular past this sign. There's a crossing guard there, and I think that how do we mitigate that risk, right? So, I don't know how wide that curb cut is. I'd like to know. I think that would be helpful, but it sure looks wider than 20, if it's a one-way out situation, it could be as small as 16 feet and still get, or let's say 24 feet, still have two lanes of traffic, one that turns left, one that turns right, based on what our consultant is recommending. And it still will be, I think, significantly narrower than what it is today, right? I mean, is that kind of where you were
Yeah, and
going at?
I'm also concerned that True North opened in that center, next to the yogurt
True North.
place. True North is the North Shore Special Ed
Oh, yeah,
District.
okay.
And they go out for lunch en masse. It's just not pedestrian friendly for what it could be. And I'm concerned for safety.
Yes.
Adding on to that
Mr.
pedestrian
Robin.
friendliness, I'd just like to say two things. One, on that door leading on, if you could pull up packet page number 46, Carl. Perfect. That lighter gray area, that looks like it's supposed to be a pedestrian-esque walkway. I think we'd also appreciate, I'm speaking for myself, I hope you agree, also appreciate some sort of difference between that landing area and the driveway, because otherwise, I know at least some people are going to try to make the narrowest turf as possible because there is a car right in front of them so they can get out and get to the vacuums.
Are you
So,
talking about the gray area right
right
by,
underneath the door.
okay, but we won't have any pedestrians going in there.
Well, it's a basis of the matter. Someone's standing there, for example, an employee taking a break.
Right.
If someone makes a super narrow turn, they were
Right.
seeing that person.
Right.
And then I think that combined with the curb cut, there's so much opportunity for these cars to get out and move. So if they're stuck, they're going to go in any way possible. If a person is trying to turn right on Elm, someone's going to try to get around them to turn left or going to the
Oh,
south
absolutely.
curb.
You'll probably get two people
So if
trying to
we
turn
res-
left and somebody trying to turn right.
So if we restrict that curb cut a little bit and restrict that path out of the self-serve a little bit, we're making this area a whole lot safer, keeping those people off the sidewalk and off those pedestrian areas.
Any response to that?
It's the existing curb cut. Public Works has said that it's not a problem. Civil Tech has said it's not a problem. So the professionals have said it's not a problem. And I want to rely on professionals.
I'm a professional and I'm obviously not a civil engineer, but I'm an architect with a specialty in disability rights and laws, and I'm concerned at the width of that curb cut. Understand?
Okay. I don't really have a response. It's the existing curb cut.
Yeah.
And we've removed two curb cuts, which should make it well more pedestrian friendly, but I understand your point.
Well, the property had all curb cuts the entire length of First.
And Elm.
However, it was done.
And Elm.
50, the whole thing is curb cuts.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you taking them out. I
Well-
can't even understand why some of them were there in the first place.
Right.
And maybe if there's a better way to delineate the sidewalk, stripe it across the driveway so that people know where to walk to and the exiting cars are aware that a person might be, make it like a crosswalk. And then if like I said, if there's a way to delineate the sidewalk from the rest of the driveway along Elm there would be good.
And we're happy to stripe it, and we would have intended to stripe it. It should be on the civil plan, and you're right, it's not. But we always stripe our lots like that.
Any other comments or questions for the petitioner?
I have a question.
Yes,
So
Jackson.
just to be clear, Carl, can you go to packet page 40 with the landscaping plan? I believe Commissioner Arnold, I hope you pay attention. I'm going to mention a few points, and I think you're going to be the expert on this, considering you did just mention you're an
She is.
architect with a interest in disability rights.
She is.
So that is the correct plan for the parking spots in front of the building, right? We have 5 normal parking spots, 5 normal parking spots and 1 handicap ADA spot?
Well,
Those are vacuum area.
Yes,
Those are
but
vacuum spots.
Those are the correct terms of spot.
They're traditional spots, and then there is an accessible spot, yes.
And there are 3 parallel
Employee
spots.
spots.
And there are 5 vacuums?
There are 5 vacuums.
Because I'd just like to point out on the packet page 41, We have a rendering here, and it shows, Carl, could you pull it up, please? Package 41.
It shows a vacuum.
It shows 8 vacuums and 6 parking spots and 1 ADA accessible spot. 41's up a little bit, you passed it, it's that rendering up there.
That's the sign plan.
The sign plan, okay. I just feel like it would be appreciated, even in a sign plan, that we get a more realistic view of how many vacuums are going to be there, because the vacuums do have signs on them, and where these vacuums are going to be placed, just to make sure that the ADA spot has a vacuum that will be able to be used by the people in that ADA spot, and that we are not like unevenly distributing these vacuums among 7 spots with 5.
Let's put it a different way. You need to get your plans to agree.
Yep.
Chair.
Yes.
That was a staff comment from, not this report, but Julie.
What, to get the plans to agree?
Yeah, just that, to indicate that there were some deviations between
Yeah.
the renderings and the sign plan.
Carl, I don't want this to go to city council without the plans agreeing. I'm going to tell you that right now. You don't send this to city council without these plans agreeing between them. And if it takes them 6 months to get them to agree, that's how long they're going to have to wait, because you can't show the city council conflicting information, in my mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just assume they not show us conflicting information.
I would too.
And I would rather not vote until
Well-
I clear up the conflicting information.
I'm happy to, somebody could make a motion to continue this for 2 more weeks, if they're so inclined, if the petitioner is willing to wait. But I don't know that they're willing to wait, and I don't know that somebody's going to make that motion. I think we're still asking a lot of questions for something that's going to be, going to city council at this point, personally. And I don't think that we'd be delaying anything at this point, because the plans don't agree if we were to say, come back in 2 weeks with plans that agree.
And rendering, plans and rendering.
Well, when I say plans, I'm talking about the packet,
Okay.
right?
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
not talking about, but I also want to think about, and I know we're having discussion before there's, before probably we should, but I'm looking at this layout again, and I'm looking at, should there need to be 2 curb cuts on First Street? Could we eliminate the northern curb cut north of that power pole, right? So that the only curb cut, and again, I don't know how wide they are, and that would be helpful to know. If it's 35 feet wide, if the one with the exit arrow is 35 feet wide, it's plenty wide to have two-way, somebody coming in and coming out. And that would actually add some more stacking to the thing before you got to the point where it was going out onto First Street, where we've already told them and they've agreed, if it spills out on the street, the police have the option to pause their business until such time as that demand went away and they didn't block the street.
If I may clarify one thing, and I know we're not closed yet, so I
No,
believe I
that's
can.
fine.
So note,
Having a discussion.
couple things. One is to note that this is not one single curb cut.
I understand.
It was, we got that existing pole, so I know it appears wide, but noted that there's an island in the middle. And 2, I would say, as far as the plans having inconsistencies, obviously we will fix that for council, but I would say that we rely on the civil plan, that the renderings are important. The elevations are what we really rely on as far as building, of course, and the renderings are for people to understand and get a better view. So that's our point of view. Maybe you
I
disagree.
appreciate that, but I've done a lot of hearings where I had to make sure all my plans agreed, because I understand how you as a constructor, let's say, what you rely on, but I think the council isn't necessarily, or other people, that's just not just the council, but the community doesn't understand that on face value, right? They're going to want to look at this and just like you heard today, well, that doesn't match. Which one are you building, right? So I want you to be really clear as to what it is that they're going to approve, if they're going to approve it, because there's conflicting information. And as I said, this packet, all of it, becomes part of the ordinance. And so when you go to, it's kind of like, what are we buying, right? You've got to be very clear as to what it is that you're proposing. And I think having conflicting information makes it questionable as exactly what it is they're approving. That's just my point with it, right? And that's why I prefer that way. Yes, sir.
So there's a
Mr.
couple of
Fontaine.
things that the commission can do. I want to bring to your attention another matter as well. But with regard to plans, I mean, you know, if these civil plans or the plans that they're building to, then you could request or make as a condition of approval, the revised set of plans be submitted in accordance with what's depicted in the civil plans for all renderings, elevations, et cetera.
Yep.
That can be handled that way, okay, and sent to city council, and we'll make sure to get those and then put that in the packet. The other item, Commissioner Arnold made a very important point regarding the sign. She, if I'm recalling correctly, inquired, this use has had to come in due to abandonment as a new PUD or SUP PUD. What about the sign, the pre-existing sign there? And so in that question, the answer to which is the sign code does have a provision related to pre-existing non-conforming signs. It would appear based on the situation at hand, given the abandonment of the use, that the sign too would be abandoned. So whether that sign is allowed to stay or remain is part of your consideration. Essentially, it would be a variance to have it stay in this context. So I just wanted to make that clear and address Commissioner Arnold's question on the matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So, okay. Anything else that we want to bring up? Okay, what's the pleasure of the commission?
We have people who want to public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Anybody here from the public who wants to come on up? Sorry, didn't mean to ignore you. I apologize. I'm still, I think, operating on Pacific time right now, so thank
I
you.
resemble that remark.
Yeah, I know you do too. We were in the same basic place. I got home at 9:30 last night.
Okay, my name is Nancy Meacham. I've already
Here,
been sworn
please,
in.
pull the microphone down a little bit so people
Because
can
I'm
hear you.
short.
Thank you, Ms. Meacham.
Okay,
And we did get a fairly lengthy letter from you in this packet, so
I
just so you know that we got it.
thank you. I
You have
appreciate
3 minutes, Ms. Meacham.
Okay, I'm requesting that this commission, that the PDC deny waterway car washes request for a car wash at 1971st Street. What is special about the proposal? What is the need? Do we need oil and gas in the sewer system, more noise and pollution from exhaust? Do we need water slush, icy streets, sidewalks, dangerous to vehicles and pedestrians, especially as children who are going to school? The things Waterway will bring with the proposed car wash are not special. They will in fact bring detriments to Highland Park. I noticed there really weren't any complete drawings of Elm and First Street, probably because if you look at the intersection, and I drive by there every day, I live about a half a block away, it's so confusing with all the entrances and exits to parking lots, including shops on Elm. People are going to be coming in and out right next to the exit. In addition, I seem to recall one time where the commissioner said that they had requested that 5 feet be taken off of the building. That was not done. And then I also remember Mr. Goldman from Waterway said regarding the drip, a trench drain will be at the exit. And yet it seems to me that the trench drain has not been provided. So I would ask you to clarify that if in fact that is the case, because we need to get rid of the water that's on the cars. There's no one drying them. Also, Civil Tech's memo says out-of-way travel would increase traffic volumes on adjacent blocks as drivers circulate back to the original destination. So it matters that traffic is increased on adjacent blocks, but it doesn't matter that the car wash will increase traffic on Elm and First Street. There is a car wash already 2 blocks directly south that is by appointment only. We already have at least 5 car washes in the city of Highland Park, all but that one that is self-contained are on major commercial streets. We don't need another car wash in the city of Highland Park. The 2019 study said 5,800 cars passed through Elm and First Street intersection. That was 4 years ago before the Albion was built, the attached parking lot was built. We now have the lot, which is a half a block away, which has vendors and a lot more traffic. When you close down Central, you have traffic from Central when they close it down for fares that are going to be going down Elm. The grade of the property is such that when the cars come out of the exit there, of the car wash, there is a slope. That water is going to freeze. Somebody, God forbid, is going to slip on it. I don't want to be around when that happens. I thought that the rule was that water could be brought out to people in the car. Now they're proposing that they bring out items such as car care, limited convenience items for sale, which are going to slow down people getting out. Once the genie's out of the bottle, you can't put it back in. You can't ask the police, who are already busy, to police it. And as far as the trash enclosure, having a bike repair station behind it, that's the benefit. If children or adults are even able to get to that without getting hit by a car, I don't want to ask what potential problems can exist with something like that hidden. That's an attractive nuisance to children. It's a potential danger. Use your imagination. In summation, I want to tell you how many people have said to me they would come. They agree with what I'm saying, but they say, why bother to come? Everything is a done deal on this. They say I'm beating my head against the wall. I don't want to believe I am. I have grandchildren. I don't want them walking in front of this. I hope you deny Waterway's request for a car wash. 2 quick things. I have something I'd like to pass out and would ask all of you to please read it for the sake of my grandchildren,
Okay,
for
is that
yourselves and the
a
rest.
copy of the letter that was in our packet?
No, it is
Okay,
not.
a different one.
I've spent
Okay, thank
days
you,
on this.
Thank you.
And then I would also ask
You know
one.
what? You've had
can-
your 3 minutes, so I'm.
Oh, can I just ask a question of you?
You can ask a question of me.
Okay, I just want to know where the information is that points out who the beneficiaries of the land trust are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, let me address a couple of things that you mentioned. First of all, trench drain. The trench drain was removed at the request of the Highland Park Public Works Department, who said specifically, if you listened earlier, they do not want a trench drain there. So they're doing what our staff has asked them to do. You gonna listen to me, or you gonna have a conversation? So that's number one. Number two, you mentioned the car wash down the street. Totally different kind of car wash, number one. But you cannot use zoning as a tool to limit competition, right? This is a permitted use as a special use within this district. Okay, so in this case, that's why we're here. We're here because they're allowed to petition us to ask for the special use. And so, you know, the fact that there's another car wash 2 blocks away has no bearing on what we're going to decide, because that would be a restraint of trade, which is different. The other issues, traffic, public health, safety, those are legitimate things for us to talk about. But the fact that there's another car wash 2 blocks away has no impact on on the decision that we're going to make here tonight, if we make a decision tonight. Okay? Traffic on adjoining streets, I mean, I think that I appreciate that comment, but I don't know that if this was not a car wash and it was a different kind of use that was a permitted use in this area, or even if it was something that required a special use, like say, a fast food restaurant, the same condition is going to occur, and the property owner, you know, has a right to develop it. I don't care whether it's just shops going there. I think that, you know, if it's drawing people into the area, it's going to generate traffic. And the question is traffic going to cause a particular problem? And I understand Ms. Meacham's point is that she feels it will. So, you know, that's certainly within, you know, I appreciate her expressing that. In terms of who the beneficial owner is of the land trust, as long as, I don't know that we would know that. I don't know that we're right, that it's within our rights to ask that, other than they have to prove to the city staff that they have standing to bring a petition before us. And that obviously was done, or else we wouldn't have spent, several hours over 3 meetings talking about this project, right? And proof of ownership is available. Now, you had your chance. Proof of ownership is available at the city Community Development Department if anybody wanted to go take a look at it. Correct? Is that correct, Mr. Fontaine?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's go back to, anybody else want to talk public comment? Yes, sir, come on up. And then you want to talk. Okay, Larry. Have you been sworn previously as you're walking? Okay, come on up. I guess.
Mel Katz, last name is K-A-T-Z.
And you have been sworn.
Yes, I've been
Okay.
sworn in, thank you.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
I just have one issue, and I know you spoke to it briefly. There's gonna be water coming down that incline, no matter what the city said. That's a dangerous issue. Cars are gonna slide down that, as well as people are gonna slide that in the wintertime because the cars are coming out somewhat wet, and there's obviously nowhere to go except down the incline. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Katz.
That's my question.
Thank you. When Mr. Friedman comes back, we'll give him a little bit of a last word. Hopefully, he's not gone too long. Huh? Obviously. But I don't want to have discussion when he's not in here. And I hit the door.
There you
We're waiting, sir. I know. No, you don't need to. There are a few of us who can relate.
Lawrence Friedman, attorney for petitioner.
Yeah, and you've been sworn, correct?
I have been sworn.
It's Freedman, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I gather from the conversation on the commission that the decision you really have tonight is whether to take action and make a recommendation and to submit findings, or to defer this to address the issues that you've talked about tonight.
Correct.
As indicated, as Joel indicated, there is obviously a way you could move this forward and require that before it goes to the council, there be internal consistency in the plans and everything else. There is a way to address those issues. You may recall when we first appeared and the matter was continued after our first hearing, that Mr. Goldman indicated there were some contractual concerns about our timing. I know a lot of petitioners say that, but there were. And he talked to the owner and got additional time. And that shouldn't be the determinative factor, but it is a factor for us. And I want to make you aware of it.
Thank you.
We feel that we have responded significantly to what we've heard at the previous 2 hearings. There have been major changes to the traffic configuration. The right in, right out, or rather the right out, which we've agreed to, is actually being recommended against by your own consultant, but we're still willing to do it because it seemed important to this commission. The change in the signage, the change in the elevations, the change in the whole way the plan works with the entrance off of First and now the exit on Elm. There's nothing we heard tonight that we can't address before we go to the council. We can certainly make the plan internally consistent. We can certainly add some shrubbery or something along First to give you the sense of a vertical barrier in this landscaping and not just turf. This wasn't an attempt by Mr. Goldman to do the bare minimum. This was maybe a mistake on our part, but an attempt to comply with what we heard. We think that we have, in good faith, tried to address every issue we heard tonight and made significant changes. All we would ask of you tonight is if you're inclined ultimately to recommend that this be approved, subject to whatever conditions you want to impose. And one of the ones you want to impose is all the internal consistencies and everything else be there before it goes to the council. We would strongly urge you to do that for us tonight. Because if we miss additional time, we do have some contractual problems that we're going to run into. Sincerely, that we will.
Thank you, Larry. All right, let's go back to what does the commission wish to do? You've heard quite a bit from the attorney as to why it causes a problem if we continue this for two more weeks. Yes, Mr. Hirsch.
I would move that we continue this matter to October 17th meeting.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, let's have some discussion on this, because this is not can I have discussion on this? Because it's not a motion to table, it's a motion to continue, right?
Motion to table takes it off the
Right,
everything.
right.
You know,
So, but there's no discussion on a motion to table. I think there can be on a motion to continue, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's have some discussion on that.
Can't you discuss it in any motion?
No, you can't on a motion to table.
Oh, okay. Did not.
Yes, Commissioner Arnold.
Can we have that discussion?
Yeah.
We're still discussing whether.
No, we can have a discussion.
Um,
There's a motion and a second, so.
Joel brought up that the existing sign is a variance, and I don't think we've had a chance to discuss that at length, having been given that new information.
Okay.
And I also think that it is valid to worry about where the water's going, since the city doesn't want it going with a trench drain into the existing sewer system. So I do think it's valid to ask them to, create a water drainage program or water containment type program on site, so that the water stays on site and doesn't lead onto public sidewalks or public roadways. So I think that's valid concern of the community and something that's worth discussion, or coming back with a response from civil about how that water will be contained on site, and understand that further before voting.
Let me recognize Council Liaison Lidauer, because she wants to, I think she wants to say something.
No, actually, I don't, but I do think that staff should probably clarify the part about the water.
Right.
And the trench, which I think has been overruled by the engineers. In
Right.
terms of saying, like, this isn't the way we do it.
I mean, I think.
And they're not viewing that
Yeah.
as an issue, but I don't want to speak for staff, and I think staff should clarify it.
I think all he knows what the engineering department said, right?
We'd have to go back to our engineering division with pointed questions on the matter.
My guess, and it's a guess, I mean, well, let me back up. I'll tell you again, I'm probably injecting myself earlier than I should. The engineering department and the public works department are there to keep our community safe within reason. They know the use that's being proposed here, and they know the property that it's being proposed on. So if they are not concerned about the water tracking out, I don't know that it's in our purview to overrule, or I don't think it's smart to overrule them, let's put it that way. That being said, we do have a safeguard in there that the police can basically, if the conditions are unsafe, close them down. Now, we can sit there and say, should that be an action of the police?
Who's making that decision?
Well, I mean, my guess is, it's like most things, somebody calls up and says, there's a problem at this intersection, do something about it. And the city will take action. As a former council person once suggested to me, 3 emails in Highland Park constitute a crisis. And so I think what you will see is, there's enough traffic going through there that if people don't feel safe, somebody's going to call the police and say, this is an unsafe condition. And the police are going to come out, and they're going to look at it, and they're going to go, yeah, it's an unsafe condition. We're going to tell them stop operating until they clean it up, right? Until such time as they make it safe. I mean, I don't know any other way to manage that. Technically, they cannot water can't run off the site into the street because you're not supposed to put water from your site in. Where it can do, it can come off of, can come off of cars from the sidewalk down, basically, because that's city property and that's got to drain somewhere. But if the engineering department says we don't want that, I would be really loath to overrule them personally.
Well, I thought that was why we had them put the infrared heater over
That is
the
one of the
exit,
reasons.
so that it would help dry that
Correct.
part of the
But
driveway.
it's still gonna be, water's still gonna be on tires.
So-
And it's still, if they're doing undercarriage washes, it could be dripping off the undercarriage of the car, right? I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and say, no water's gonna get out on the street. I don't think they've said that. I don't think that's realistic, right?
Well, do we need to have them have like a plan for, I remember the old car wash used to throw salt out there, maybe they have to put out some kind
I don't think they're gonna want it to be unsafe, because
Right.
if people don't feel safe there.
They won't go.
They're not gonna go. So I trust Waterway as an operator as a business, to do the smart thing and do whatever they need to do to keep that area safe on their property. Off their property, if it tracks down their property, that's where the city can step in and say, guys, this is a problem.
Well, didn't we expressly discuss this at the last meeting too? It's gonna be staffed and they'll
Right.
put ice melt and, I
Yeah.
mean, that was, we discussed that.
And we've said in the conditions, there's a condition that they have staff on site during operating hours.
I need to step it too. It sounds, from looking at the staff comments, says there's no place to drain it if not allowed to go back to sanitary in the building. I assume that, I'm not sure what that means, if they're saying, since it won't be connected to the sanitary sewer, it has no place for the water to go, or whether they don't want it connected to the sanitary sewer system. That being said,
Generally, they don't want to connect it to the sanitary sewer because it's
Right.
technically almost like a storm drain.
Right, and I don't actually, I have issues with the project, but this to me isn't one, it's not like there's gonna be water gushing out of this car wash. That, coming down in waves to the street, if it's running properly. It'll be dripping off of cars, there will be some water coming out. The issue is, to me, if there might be some, because it'll be thin, it'll be freezing on the pavement before you even get to the curb cut. And that's where I don't know what you do about that, except the heater. We live in the northern part of the country. It's gonna get cold and that's gonna happen. It happens, I'm assuming it's an issue at every car wash, north of Georgia. So that's kind of my thought about that. I still am having trouble, and I'm Mr. Friedman, I do the same thing he does, and I'm close to hundreds of deals. I've worked on dozens of projects like this across the country. Nowhere have I ever seen two curb cuts next to each other like this. And I know it's been there, I know you didn't put it there.
What's going on?
I don't know, I'm guessing Shops at Home Place was built second?
Yeah, it was.
And whoever approved that, I still can't get past that. And I don't know what to do about it, but when the lake car wash closed, you eliminated that problem and now we're talking about putting it back. And I don't know to me, there has to be something done about that, because you're gonna have one car coming here, one car here, and then one's gonna take a left and one's gonna take a right, and they're gonna right into each other. And, which is why you don't do that. So.
Everybody loop around.
Right.
You can make everybody loop around, but I don't know if we want to do that.
Yeah, well, we can't, because
the vacuum.
Shops at Home Place isn't before us, we can't put that condition in.
Right.
So, in a right turn only coming out of, which I've liked initially, it's still, you still got a curb cut right next to it, and two cars could run right into each other, and
Right.
that just truly bothers me.
Other comments? Yeah, Mr. Kirsch?
In addition to that Elm Street curb cut and entrance is still, are we going to follow Civil Tech's recommendation or not and eliminate the right turn only, in which case you could, I think that can be smaller for sure. I still have a problem with the landscaping and the alleged barriers between the pedestrian use and the vehicular use. And the whole idea now of the non-conforming sign has also been called into question. I think that's a lot of issues then that's why I made the motion I did. I think those are too many issues to forward this, even with conditions.
Mr. Manis, you got anything you want to add? No. Vice Chair, anything you wanted to add?
No, I agree with Commissioner Kirsch. I think it's too confusing to try to forward this with a long list of conditions because people who are not as familiar with the project as we are just going to pull up the plans and they're not going to read through all the fine print that says, well, we're going to change this and we're changing this and, compare the plan that was presented at this meeting with the minutes that eventually come out for this meeting. They're just not going to do that. And I think what is presented to council needs to be clean. And everybody else does that. I mean, we require that of everybody else, and I feel we need to require that here as well.
Jackson, you're nodding your head. You want to add anything?
I was just going to say that, as Commissioner Kirsch and Vice Chair Moore iterated, the main issue here seems to be coming down, do we want to present this plan to council as is with conditions, or do we want to take a look at it ourselves again to lessen the burden on council of having to parse through this plan as we did? Because we've already had such an intricate knowledge of this plan, it seems kind of futile to say, here are all these changes, here, council, you figure it out now. Start where we started a while ago.
If I may.
Yes.
Chair, I really appreciate it. First of all, thank you very much to the commissioners, because this is the third meeting where you're considering this. I think if, in fact, petitioner feels that in order to move forward, the time frame is such, whether it's weather or climate or whatever, they need to move it, I think you give them strict direction. And I know how comprehensive both the minutes have been. I know all the detail you've gone in through. And this is, at this point, I think you need to move it along in order to make it a feasible plan, if in fact it goes that way. Which, again, there are a lot of caveats to that. But at some point, if we don't move it along and end up killing the business, that really doesn't, go further either.
So when you say move it along, you would
She'd like us to recommend something tonight.
move it on
With
to,
conditions.
okay,
Yeah.
but that means that you guys are gonna have to parse through all the,
Well, I think that you need to put the conditions on it. I think you've done a really good job of doing that so far. For example, the fact that the plans are still inconsistent is bothersome. On the other hand, it's not worth, if in fact they're going to
Delaying
move
it
forward.
2 weeks.
I think you've directed them very well so far. Certain things have gone forward. Staff has gone back, checked into those things. Some of them are not necessary or not concerns. Others have already been fixed. Let's bring it into compliance and move it along. I don't think it's that complex, frankly.
So let me start out by saying this is a very difficult case for me personally. I can't speak for everybody else. Ideally, would I want to see this size car? Do I have a problem with, first question, do I have a problem with a car wash being there? No, under the right circumstances and conditions, I don't. I don't know what else could be used. Would I have approved this particular building on this particular site if it was coming to us as a totally new project? No, I wouldn't, right? I'm having to deal with some existing conditions that may be less than optimal, but I'm balancing that against, what else could go there, in my own mind, if it was a plain grass site, what could we do? And I was the one who asked if the building could be shortened, and I was told, no, they're not going to do that. That's within their rights, and I don't know that that's enough of a lever to make me say no to this, right? I will tell you that reusing the existing non-conforming sign doesn't bother me because it's been there for so long and people are used to it. So that doesn't bother me, but there's still a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of things we've been asking about that I would prefer to see in some ways before we moved it along, particularly related to the landscaping And particularly, in my mind, related to some of these curb cuts that I do think are probably wider than what we would be approving if we were asked to be doing this, you know, from scratch, right? And I know from having done other, you know, other things in Highland Park that are similar in terms of the nature of use. Now, granted, they're in different parts of the community. You know, that we had to compromise or at least prove why we needed to have a curb cut as wide as we had asked for, if it was over and above whatever it is that the standard was, right? And we haven't necessarily done that here. That's a little bit of a concern. The landscaping issue, because we really don't know what's going in any of these places, is a little, you know, I personally would rather see this, but I'm torn with that versus the idea that, you know, yes, this petitioner has been working with us and been pretty cooperative with pretty much everything we've asked him to do. And I know that time is money. And as, you know, as this drags out, it's costing them more money. And, you know, I guess it comes down to how you really feel. If you feel that, you know, a car wash is an acceptable use for this property, then I think it is time to move it along, because otherwise we could string it out 2 more weeks and turn them down, and that's not fair either, right? If somebody, you know, if we were to make a motion on the findings of fact, I think a couple of things that we should consider adding. Number one, we should make a decision on whether we approve that sign or not, but I don't know that sign is part of the findings of fact. That's part of the design review. So that would be covered under the.
Design needs a sign variation.
Does it need a sign variation? So it is part of finding facts. Okay.
It's definitely a modification.
We need to decide whether we're okay with that sign or not. We also, I think, need to condition this on a full landscape plan being provided to the staff for their review prior to it going to city council. I'm willing to allow the forester and the forestry department to figure out what plants are best to go there. I agree that you don't want, you know, you don't want something high that's going to block vision, right? It's got to be lower than 2 feet probably. But
Excuse me, Commissioner,
Yeah.
along those lines, if you look, I believe it was page 46 or 47, there were a lot of
Dots.
bushes. No.
Oh, on the rendering.
On the rendering.
Right.
And so I guess that's a question also for the petitioner. Are they in fact offering to put in that additional landscaping, or is that?
Well, no, because they said that was just the rendering and the landscape plan just says turf.
Well, that's why I wanted.
So I want to, but I'm
That's-
telling you, I think it should be a condition that they provide planting there, not turf. And that, you know.
Just like the
Sure,
standard
Jen.
landscape plan, it still indicates those are stripes.
It's,
In the south side.
it indicates
On the
stripes.
bottom side of towards the building, those are striped. On
Yeah.
the top side, the landscape plan is remarkably similar.
Right.
In regards to the landscape itself.
So we want, yeah, so what you're saying is it needs to, so we'll get to that, right? So we've already talked about, there's some areas on here that we want to see landscaped and not striped. That should be clearly spelled out as a condition of this as well. Certainly, all the plans should be in agreement before it goes to city council. I understand that, you know, and if, you know, the petitioner has said they're going to base it off the civil drawings. So that all the plans should match the civil drawings, and that includes the renderings, as far as I'm concerned. Everything that goes to city council should sync up.
Who's going to verify that that is the case?
Staff,
Staff.
that's their job.
Exactly.
I think another condition that has to be added is we have to decide, how do we want these signs externally illuminated? You know, because there's no information as to how it is. I heard the petitioner say, well, it may be uplight, it may be downlight. I think we want to figure that out, and particularly if either way, it's going to change the plans that have been submitted. If it's a downlight, it's good, there's gonna have to be something mounted on that, I'll call it pylon, and it's gonna have to be something mounted on the pylon that shines down. The directional signage, since it's not going to be internally illuminated, that would probably be some kind of ground-mounted light that shines up, but but somehow we have to be assured it's not shining in the eyes of people driving down the street as they come along, right? So we have to decide how we want to recommend that those signs be illuminated. I have doubts about the sign that was the famous, I would call, floating sign that's indicated as, I don't read the number there, but the one that's on Elm Street that's kind of out in the right of way where it can't be in the right of way. That's a little bit of a concern, I would say, because it just makes no sense being there. To me, at the very least, I would want to see "do not enter" on the side facing the street, and having just an arrow on the other side is fine, as far as I'm concerned, but it needs to be pretty clear that you can't come in that way. We have to decide whether we want to follow Civil Tech's recommendation in terms of allowing a left turn out of the exit off of Elm Place. Personally, I don't have a problem, but if we're going to start, if we're going to accept their recommendation on that, why wouldn't we accept all of their recommendations on the other things? And so we got to be very clear about those as well. Have I missed something? Yes.
You mentioned the curb cut widths, but just to clarify, I think the one on First Street that has a pole in the middle
Yep.
between two curb cuts could be easily reduced down to one with an in and an out. And
Correct.
the width of the one on Elm Place that's adjacent to the shopping center exit is so large that no matter how you sign that, people will take it as an entrance.
Right.
There's the way
no
that
way,
you've done
right.
the plan with the size of that curb cut, it just screams, come in here this way. No matter how you sign it, people do not follow the signs. It's going to be a dangerous situation, and that honestly is the only thing
I
that
don't know.
I
This is where
think
I'm
needs to be 100% fixed.
And
Safety.
and I think that, I think you raised a very good point, Denise, that we've got, we would also have to make a condition denoting the width that we would find acceptable for those couple of curb cuts. So when I look at all that,
Oh, I had a.
yeah, you have another one?
So I know it's late to the game, maybe you just run so I think, in addition to people not reading the signs, I think there will be a collective memory in town of, oh, we enter the car wash this way, because that's how we used to do it. And so.
Well, even if there's no collective memory, they're going to see it and they're going to say,
Right.
let's go in that way.
So, a suggestion is to completely eliminate the curb cut and force everyone to exit back out of First Street, but, maybe but otherwise, the other thing we needed to cover before it would go to city is how are we protecting the pedestrians on the sidewalk?
Right. And I think, so what I'm looking at is, I'm looking at a list of potential additional conditions that is exceptionally lengthy and exceptionally complex. And so perhaps that's why we want them to come back in 2 weeks, so that we can maybe not have some of those conditions and have a more cohesive look at this. I mean, this is what I'm struggling with. Yes, Joel?
Mr. Chairman, so in terms of when this can get to city council, so, and part
Yeah, why
of
don't
maybe
you
the
tell us
decision might be
Right.
hinging on, does it delay that, right?
Right.
And so we do have a city council meeting on the 10th.
Let's
That
not go in
meeting is
there.
passed in terms of ability to get on that meeting. Those are already due to the city manager today, as a matter of fact, so
Right.
that's not going to be the case. We won't be able to do that. But the PDC's meeting of the 17th precedes the council meeting of the 23rd.
Can we
You know,
have a
depending on if
placeholder?
the applicant could get us back the revised plans as requested from the commission with the revisions and all that, we could attempt to draft to be on the city council meeting, then in anticipation of a vote on the 17th.
That would be great.
I just wanted to put that out there. Otherwise, it would be going into November for a city council
Right.
meeting.
If we could have a placeholder on the council meeting on the 24th, that seems to be the best way, if it's acceptable. These folks, it's not going to delay you if we have the 24th. Yes, Larry, come on up. 23rd, whatever
It's
it
not going to
is.
delay if you continue to the 17th,
Right.
provided that we have the revised
Right.
set of plans and we can get drafting
Well,
as quickly as possible.
I'm convinced they can work miracles.
If we're not going to get to the council till that date anyway, and if we can, I understand it's a quick turnaround.
Right.
Between that meeting here and the council. But if we have a chance to make that, we understand your concern about the complexity of the
Yeah,
condition.
even if.
We want to work with you.
Even if you don't get all of what we just talked about incorporated at this point, if we can shrink that list
That would be
considerably,
helpful. Yeah.
that would be helpful, right? So.
Well, I think a lot of lists can get shrunk, but frankly, and it's not a criticism, just a comment, some of these points are coming for the first time.
I
You know,
understand that.
Like driveway width, we assume when we get a report from Public Works and we get that
I understand that.
that it's a
Larry.
non-issue.
But you know,
That's right.
when people look, the more things, people look at things, the more things we come up with. I mean, that.
We don't object to coming back on the 17th, but we
So,
would
there's a
implore
motion.
you to take action that night so we can get on the
Right.
council to next meeting.
So the
Yes.
council meetings are the 23rd and the 13th of November, so
Right.
23rd of October.
I'd like we want to get them on the 23rd if
We'll
we're
make
going to
every
move this
attempt to
ahead.
Draft everything that we can to do that, but,
Okay.
you know, then we'll need the revised plans and see what the commission makes a decision or not. Yep.
So let's give them a little bit of direction. Let's start with that because there's some things we can do to give them some direction. Let's start with the sign that, the existing pole sign. Huh?
Are they keeping it or not?
Well, they want to keep it.
You do, okay.
So do we have a problem with them keeping it? Let's put it that way. I personally don't. I don't know about anybody else. I see shaking no heads that way.
I have no problem.
I see a consternated face of my vice chair who's struggling with that decision.
Just doesn't have to be unanimous.
So the hours are 8 to 8, right?
Yeah.
So at the most, it's gonna be lit up from like 5 to 8 in the wintertime, 4 to 8.
Maybe 4 to 8:30, you know, in terms of, but yeah, probably 4 to 8.
In the findings that
Huh?
I had drafted, my understanding was that the signs were only to be lit while the business was in operation.
Right.
Yes.
So it was limited to 8
Okay,
a.m.
so
to 8
fine,
p.m.
so 8 till 8 PM.
I don't love it, but I'm willing to give on that one.
Commissioner Arnold?
I feel like the entire building's a sign. You've got a building that's a sign.
Let me address that. Can I address that as having somebody who's designed corporate facilities and why I don't like to mess with that? They spend a lot of money on their image. It is their brand identity. I don't believe it's up to me to sit there and say, you know, a sign is defined as an attention-getting device. Well, or something that draws attention to something. Well, there's lots of I once sat through a hearing where a guy said, you know, the Pizza Hut sign, the Pizza Hut roof is a sign. Or the McDonald's roof is a sign because McDonald's used to only allow you to do a double mansard roof, right? That was their image station. I've seen.
I'm not objecting to
Right,
the building
okay.
as a sign.
Right.
I'm saying that the building is a sign, and they're asking for a variance on another sign. And so I really feel
Okay.
like they are illuminated fully and fully identified and visible from both Elm Place and First Street without the additional
Okay.
post.
So
That's my point.
I will say that at the last meeting, I made the comment that there was a lot of signs along First Street, and we did have them remove a sign from the building
Yep.
because we were allowing the illuminated posts. I mean, maybe we allow the pole sign, but no illumination or external illumination.
I think, well, okay, whatever the commission wants to do. Again, I personally
I-
don't have an issue with that sign because it's there.
My point is, I don't,
Right.
I don't want to
Heard
take
the-
it
heard
away
the-
because we already took away one of their other signs.
Well, I mean, I think
I don't-
applicants heard our comments and
Right.
can decide.
They
how
can
want it.
decide, right?
So.
Okay.
You're damned if you do, damned if you
Yeah.
don't.
Driveway width, do we have a maximum that we're willing
Which
to?
driveway?
Well, I would say in general, do we have a maximum that we're willing to accept, first of all? Yes, Denise?
I understand we're not the city of Chicago, but CDOT in their publication for street and
24
site
feet.
planning has maximum widths for two-way entrances being 25 feet.
Yep. So 25 feet?
That's the maximum allowed.
I
in the
believe
city
our
of
city
Chicago
standard is 35 feet,
for-
if I remember right.
Planning to scroll to that right now. Just
Yeah,
Chapter
you do that.
93.
I believe it's 35 feet, if I remember
If
correctly.
we do defer, yeah, I mean, unless there's a compelling reason to go more stringent than our code, our local code.
Right.
Despite the fact that other places might have more stringent codes. You have to
But
go-
however, I think perhaps we've got two different cases, right?
I'm saying
We have a
that's
case
compelling reason.
on Elm Place where it's one way out. And the wider it gets, the more enticing it gets for somebody to break that in. So, you know, whether that's
Well, I think,
24 feet or 16 feet, or I don't,
right, because
that
I
is
think your
major
problem
number.
getting out of Elm Place is gonna be, are you now gonna get cars stacked horizontally? Some trying to make a left and some trying to make a right, or if we're keeping it only right, that's fine. Then we maybe want it narrower so that people don't enter there. The other question is on the other driveways, if you're exiting out of the First Street entrance, is there room enough, the way we have it set up, for there to be a car, two cars there, one turning left, one turning right?
right. I mean, you know, if we were to sit here and say we wanted a maximum of 35 feet as a driveway, let's say, and we didn't want those two, you know, we didn't want the two together with the island with the pole in it, for all I care, they could move that south edge of that curb further south to make it 35 feet and not hurt anything in my mind, right?
I really don't care about the First Street.
I don't care about the First
Okay,
Street either. I'd
that's
actually, call me crazy, I'm not an architect.
But you play one on
Caveat,
TV.
But I stayed at Holiday Inn Express last night.
Yeah,
I would love to see the Elm Place curb cut eliminated completely and a second one on First Street. Before all the drying stations, so
Oh,
that
boy.
if you don't go to the drying stations, you can go right out there. And then we eliminate the double curb cut.
so there was one there, right? And we had them take it out. Oh, no, it's further in,
Well, there was like four.
yeah. Now, that one was removed, and then there's one on
Right.
First Street that was removed.
Yeah.
Right.
But what you're saying is about where that arrow is there,
Where the existing pile.
where that
is
arrow,
on,
yeah, well, or
Right
just south of
next-
that,
yeah, yeah.
right?
On either side, but whatever makes sense, to eliminate any exit on Elm Place and have both on First Street.
So the one concern with that is
I'm
would
getting
people
a
be,
no from,
would be
Mr.
people be
Friedman.
trying to
Mr.
enter there?
Friedman's
That was the
saying no.
problem. We said,
Doesn't matter, Mr. Friedman's saying no.
Yeah.
So that's not something they want to entertain. That's totally, I mean, we
Yeah.
could force it on them. I don't think we
No.
really want to do that.
we had it before and we had good reason to get rid of
Right.
it.
Okay, so let's go back to the question. So there's no problem with the one on First, we're only debating the one on Elm Place. How wide do you want the one on Elm Place? I mean, to me, it shouldn't be any more than 24 feet at the very least, even if that allows one lane of traffic to go right, one lane of traffic to go left. But that brings up the other question, do we want to follow Civil Tech's recommendation?
Well, that still allows people to think that they could enter that way. You know, but again, that's,
Yeah,
I think if you restrict, if you restrict it short enough so that there's two markings, you add some sort of marking that shows that like this is, you have to stop before you enter or something of that sort. And then you mark on the curb, turn left, turn right. I think that will be enough indication for people to see if we make it very, very clear, this is a turn left lane and this is a turn right lane for civil tech. So because the clearer you make these things for the drivers,
Yes.
people see, and you don't drive into a left turn lane. You drive.
My
in this-
mother does.
You don't drive into a left turn lane.
There are
the
people who
opposite
do,
direction.
trust me.
There are people who do, but most people
Let's
don't.
put up the spikes like you do with the rental car place,
thinking
right?
that
Spikes are a gift.
No, thank you. And we're being silly. Don't get concerned. We're being a little silly. So do we want, first of all, do we have a problem with the right hand, of following Civil Tech's recommendation on allowing both directional turns off of that driveway?
I don't know if we had civil text comments about a right turn only.
We did.
Previously, we
No, not
would have.
previously, no.
We wouldn't have, I don't think we would have done it.
Right,
I don't think so.
I think they're the expert.
right, thank you.
Trust
I agree. So, okay, that'll be a full driveway, but I think it needs to be narrower than what
Well,
it is.
that's-
And then the other question is, how do you make it narrower? Do you make it narrower from the east or from the west? Because if you made it narrower from the west, it would then separate from the Elm Place driveway,
Right,
right?
right, because you could almost put an island in there.
Correct.
Chair.
Yes,
May I just point out what the city code requirements?
Yes, sir.
So this would be for new driveways.
that's fine.
On this property, obviously, some of these are existing, so the non-conforming section would apply. But for new driveways, for commercial properties, the maximum width is 30 feet at the property line.
That's
30
a ma-
feet at
that's
the
a
property.
maximum, not a
That's the
minimum.
That's a
maximum.
maximum,
Yes.
not a minimum, that's correct, it's a
Yes.
maximum.
So again, I'm wondering, well, they said they have no problem with the First Avenue, so that's not the issue. So,
Is there a minimum listed, Carl?
No, not for commercial properties. For single-family residential, yes, not for commercial.
I mean, personally, 24 feet allows 2 cars to get out of there. Right? I'm okay with 24 feet, and I think I would like to suggest to the applicant that they look at cutting it down off the west part of the property, so we separate. Yeah, please take a look at that, so that, I think I've already told them what I'm looking for in terms of land, taking some of that striped pavement out and putting some kind of planting, and that I'm okay with turf, by the way, if that was the case. I don't think I have a problem with turf in those areas. I sure miss Ben Cutshy, not being here because he would have the answers to all of this. What else, Jackson?
Cohesive plans.
Huh? Oh, yeah. They know
Cohesive
that.
plans.
They know
To
that,
be reiterated for the sake of reiteration.
right.
And probably a lighting plan, because you want to know if you're uplighting or down.
Right, you need to come to us with how you want to do that, right? And I would suggest you bring fixture cuts. At least the staff's going to want to see those as part of of your package, I would think. I don't know that we necessarily need to see it, but please be very conscious about shining lights in people's eyes. I think you will be, and again, it's going to be limited timing.
Do we need to see the samples?
I thought they brought them before. Didn't you they have them with us? And I will also say, I appreciate you putting the brick on the bottom of the bottom course, of the elevations. I think it actually adds a little bit of richness to the image, and I think it will long-term hold up a lot better, so. Do you want to see the samples? They've got them
I don't
here.
have to see them.
I know what they look like
Okay.
personally. All right, so, anything else that we need to give them direction on?
Did we give enough direction on the pedestrians on the sidewalk along Elm Place?
Well, they're gonna extend the sidewalk when they,
I meant like between the driveway of the people who
Yeah.
are going around the vacuums
right,
and the sidewalk that runs along
just,
there.
yeah, I think they'll need to stripe, right. So they're gonna want a crosswalk, basically.
Well,
something like-
no, okay, so we
What do
need
you
a
want?
crosswalk where people exit to go out to Elm Place.
Right.
But if the car is turning east to go through the parking lot up to the vacuums,
Right.
there's a place where the sidewalk is parallel to the drive. And that's the part that seems unsafe.
You want a curb or you want some?
I don't
And they
know,
said-
I just
I
want
see what you're
some
talking
kind
about, yeah.
of
Some
delineation.
kind of separation.
So that a car doesn't swerve too far
Right.
to the south and drive
I think
over the
that's really-
sidewalk.
Right, well, those are the things that they, said,
Somebody
right?
will.
You said it wasn't going to be level with the lot there would be curb, but we don't see any
We
of
don't
that.
see it, so I
Show us-
can't,
And-
Show on your civil drawing that.
And they also said, I believe, that they would stripe or crosswalk the sidewalks, but we don't see that.
But that's
So
just-
that's,
That they'll do, that they'll
Yeah.
do.
so that's this area needs to be striped,
Right.
and this area needs to be delineated
Yes.
from the driveway.
Just so everybody knows, the vice chair is pointing to the.
Page
area-
50.
Page 50 of the,
Yeah.
of the packet. All right. Anything else? This can be a voice vote, correct? To continue?
Yeah, this
All
is a
right.
voice vote.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. This matter is continued to October 17th
In this room.
in this room. There will be, 7 o'clock, you'll bring birthday cake. And there will be no additional notice. The notice is actual. Thank you for your comments. We're trying really hard to make it as good a good a proposal as we can. All right, next item of business, public hearing number, continuation of public hearing number 2023-ZTA-003 for a zoning code text amendment to modify the regulations for solar power uses and structures to the zoning code, chapter 150 of the city code. And as soon as Carl is done, he will
Oh,
help us.
we're gonna start solar.
Premature to move through, Carl.
Yes. We're gonna get through this pretty quick. So much for my hour-long meeting. All right. Carl, Carl,
Copies of my records.
you want to present on the solar piece, since I just called it? And we all want to go home at a reasonable hour?
So, Chair, and I can make this really short.
Thank you.
There are absolutely no changes to this presentation from what I gave 2 weeks ago. The only thing is that the commission has now had more time to review the report, and then hopefully you were able to see, and I pointed out the link to the glare website, the study about the glare. So, Chair, I'll actually ask you, would you like me to go through this again real quick? This is the exact same as it was
Well,
2 weeks ago.
Commissioner Arnold was
Okay.
not here 2 weeks ago.
I can
so
go very
let's-
quick.
Let's do her the honor of going through it for her in case she has questions.
Okay, it's very quick. Zoning text amendment for solar power structures. So staff recommend the commission reopen the public hearing and take testimony, consider requests, and deliberate and provide feedback. Findings of fact are included in the packet. There are 3 changes that are proposed. Remove the glare regulation from Article 4 of the zoning code. Include a maximum area regulation that is proportional to the lot for accessory, should be accessory ground-mounted solar and residential zoning districts, and then allow a specific height modification by special use permit, that's SUP. Background and city council direction. Back in August of 2021, the commission and the council approved a zoning text amendment, that's ZTA, zoning text amendment, introduced solar power regulations. The city was able to become silver certified with SolSmart. The commission happened to recommend 5-0 on those changes back in, August 2021. So fast forward to this year, May 2023, the council at the committee of the whole, that's the COTW, reviewed policy changes to encourage renewable energy production and use, recommended and directed the following: to remove glare regulation, and then again to reiterate to develop that maximum area regulation that is proportional to the lot for accessory ground-mounted solar and residential zoning districts. So glare, so that's the current code provision in Article 4 of the zoning code. The proposal is to strike that, and then in the staff report, there was a link to a U.S. Department of Energy affiliated laboratory demonstrating the lack of impacts of glare from photovoltaics. And I hope that the commission had time to review that if there's concern about that. For size limitations, so that's the current code provision, which has a limit on 500 feet. If it's over 500 feet, it can only be issued for through a special use permit, and then there's a max for 1,750 square feet in total area. That is for ground-mounted solar that's accessory in single-family residential. So that's what that provision. So this is about size limitations for ground-mounted solar panels in single-family residential districts where it's an accessory use. So 500 square feet was the initial recommendation some 2 years ago because it was basically the size of a large two-car garage. Currently, staff is now proposing a 10% threshold, maybe more effective. So this table real quick. So these are our zoning districts on the left, the SLOZ, small lot overlay zone, then the R7 through the R1. These are our single-family zoning districts. This is the minimum area in square feet for districts. Properties in those areas may be bigger, may be larger, but this serves as a good proxy, a good example of what most properties in these zoning districts are probably going to be sized, though not all. So what's 10% of that? So 10% is this column. So what the proposal is that you, in that zoning district, you can go up to 10% of your lot area, and you're gonna have that by right with a building permit. But if you go over that 10%, then you can have your accessory ground-mounted solar panels, but only with a special use permit from the Plan and Design Commission and the City Council. And so you can see here, these would be the caps on the square footage. So if you're up to that, it can be by right. If you go over, you need an SUP. Then when you get up here, there's just a cap period of 1,750 square feet for single-family zoning districts. And of course, that was premised some 2 years ago along the Lake Model County ordinance for these types of developments. And the last thing, the height modification. And so this was not directed by council. I want to point that out. This is a staff addition to it. But this was something staff had discussed because now we have more real-life experience dealing with some of these submissions in the last 2 years, seeing actual permits come in. What are the actual issues? And so from staff's perspective, the 10-foot height limit is it's a good limit that's premised on the Lake County model ordinance. However, there were one, maybe two at most situations where somebody wanted to do ground-mounted higher. They had what they thought were special reasons for that. And we just noticed that the way the code is written now, if you want to get relief to that, you gotta go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for one thing, Plan and Design Commission for something else, and then also to the City Council. So this is just looking at streamlining processes. You still need to get relief if you want to go over that 10 feet and up to 12, but you can just do it as part of that SUP that goes to the PDC. So that's just meant to still have a check on it grants rights, but it's a check on rights. Then it's also a more efficient path to get relief. It's still up to the commission and council, but it just streamlines that process. I can take questions. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Arnold.
Ground mounted, so is there a setback requirement if you have adjacent properties? Can you put these things right next to
let me
each
put it, is it treated like an accessory structure, like a garage?
That is correct. So this
Gotta
is
be
geared
within
towards
3
single.
feet of the
That's correct.
back
So
property line.
ground-mounted solar cannot encroach within a required front yard, required side yard. It cannot encroach within a subdivision building line or established building setback. So basically, it can go behind the home. Then within a required rear yard, it can be up to 3 feet away from a side property line, similar to accessory structures.
Why was the glare regulation put in there in the first place? I mean,
Joel?
It was a city council member had indicated concern about that. However, we did go to the committee of the whole and we provided that additional information from the NREL and council directed that they were no longer concerned. Please remember, everybody, that we're not proposing to change any setbacks or anything. I understand the question. This is an already adopted law that we're further modifying in the ways that Carl just indicated tonight.
what did people do for glare regulation before that's too onerous or that you would want to remove it or reduce?
So generally the glare provisions, so we're following up through Soul Smart Silver. Soul Smart is a group that has essentially is promoting and encouraging municipal action to allow increased and lower regulations for solar energy so that we can have people have accessory solar with less restrictions and less burdensome regulation. And so part of doing that and pursuing those certifications, we're up to silver now, included various guidance from them. One of which is, although we are Smart Silver, one of which is provisions for glare are seen as unnecessary and just basically anti-solar. It gives people a reason to say no or a reason to have a problem with solar. The idea is that the benefits of solar outweigh the costs of whatever potential glare there is, which by the reports that we've been given and the other information we had are not really issues.
Okay.
Remember, solar panels, the idea behind them is to absorb the light energy, not reflect it. It's to essentially convert the light into energy. So anyway, the glare issue is not an issue.
Okay. Any other comments on the panel? Council Liaison, did you want to say something?
Only, I think that the solar thing really puts it in terms of us trying to have silver status, or at one point we were thinking to go for gold status, which would have meant dropping further regulations, and council has indicated they're not interested in doing that at this point. But glare did come up and the council discussed it at some length, and majority of council felt that they would rather have these regulations limited and therefore side and back, certainly
Thank
nothing in front.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none. Okay, we have findings of fact in front of us recommending approval of this ordinance change to the city council. I would say that it would be appropriate to have a motion to adopt those findings of fact.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Heck, seconded by
Second.
Vice Chair Moore. What are you going to do in a few weeks? Okay, any comments or discussion on the motion? Mr. Fontaine, please call the roll.
Commissioner Arnold,
Yes,
Commissioner Mantis,
Aye.
Commissioner Kirsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Heck,
Aye.
Vice Chair Moore,
Aye.
and Chairman Hainsford.
Yes, that's 6 ayes, no nays. The motion passes. This will be on the city council agenda. Is it going to be next week or on the following week?
No, it'll be at the second meeting in October.
Second meeting of October 23rd.
Yep, that was our.
All right, next order of business is continuation of public hearing number 2023-ZTA-007 for a zoning code text amendment to modify section 150.402 and section 150.505 related to the plan development and planned unit development requirements and applicability in other sections of the zoning code, chapter 150 of the city code as appropriate. Mr. Burhop.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so yes, same recommendation, reopen the public hearing, take testimony, consider the request and deliberate, provide feedback. Staff will return with revisions as appropriate. There were findings of fact in the packet, though staff are not asking for a vote unless that's appropriate. The purpose of this amendment is to review and clarify the applicability and regulatory triggers for plan developments, which the acronym for that is PUD. This was considered on the 5th, and then it was continued twice. It was continued the 19th and then continued to today. So a few more slides here. So the three things to look at. So general policy question number 1, should a PUD consideration be triggered for multiple principal buildings, multiple principal structures, multiple principal usage, or merely for multiple principal buildings? So at the first meeting in September, the commission indicated, I think consensus that multiple principal buildings should continue to trigger a PUD. There was some concern from some commissioners about mixed uses, though no consensus. There did not seem to be as much concern from the commission about if there are multiple principal uses, they're all commercial, such as a multi-tenant center. And I will, of course, be asking questions and taking notes from the commission. So this slide is actually from, this is the same one that was from September 5th. So that's just the provision in Article 4, and then it just talks about the implied terms of importance, the difference between a principal building, principal structure, and a principal land use. And then the section of code is there on top. Right, and then I just point out that a building is a type of structure, but a structure is not always a building, and a land use is typically contained within a building, but not necessarily so. And so this leads me to I added this, so there was a table in the report, and then I expanded that table and reposted that on Monday and made it more. And so the column on the left are only C uses, that means conditional. The column in the middle, they vary. Sometimes they're P permitted, sometimes they're C conditional. And the column on the far right are the P for permitted uses. I apologize if that got too small. Sometimes I don't always know how this is going to look when it goes up onto the board. But this was an attachment in the packet that was reposted on Monday. So the purpose of this is just to highlight to the commission what are these different uses. So the purpose of this table is to try to look at uses that may have a principal use, may or may not have a principal structure or building. And of course, you can get kind of creative with that. You never quite know what you'll see from the market sometimes until you see it. So some of these uses may theoretically only be a use and not a building, or they may have a structure and not a building. So that's kind of the purpose, to show this. And then I would call out, those on the far right are listed as permitted. Now, they're only permitted in certain districts, and those districts will vary. This table would become way too complicated if I started putting up all the different districts on them. But I will also consider the last bullet point on this slide here, as the commission considers how they may want to regulate these vis-a-vis PUD triggers. If there are concerns about some of these uses that are permitted on the far right, could also consider making them a conditional use. That would be a separate zoning text amendment. That is not this zoning text amendment, but I just want to point that out. So that's general policy question 1. Chair, should I just go through my presentation entirely and then have discussion? Okay.
What's most effective for you, Carl?
Probably for me, if you're asking me, I'll just go through my presentation and I'll go through my presentation and we can have discussion. And there may be public as well who'd like to speak.
I know they're here to talk. Stayed this long just to sit here.
So general policy question 2. So this was already up there 4 weeks ago on September 5th. So this idea about what about buildings that are already out there now that are either over 25,000 square feet and they don't have a PUD, or they're under 25,000 square feet, but what's new and what would trigger a PUD? And I'll point out for this provision is only relevant for the I and the B3 zoning districts. I want to point that out. So the commission discussed this, and then, so this is all, so this slide is from there, and it just talks about the different, so this slide is also from 4 weeks ago, and it talks about what happens, so the first bullet point, this is only relevant to the B3 and I. The second bullet point, so it's just an example. What if an applicant constructs a building of 20,000 square feet and returns 5 years later with a building addition of 6,000 square feet? Should that trigger a PUD? And then it talks about the one below, where if you already have existing ones that are over that, what if they want to do an addition? So this slide here, this is a new slide, and this is what staff had in the packet. So this is what staff would consider the commission give feedback on. So I'll just read it real quick. So any expansion or change to a legal pre-existing building with less than 25,000 square feet in total area that results in the building exceeding 25,000 square feet of total floor area, except for additions less than or equal to 1,000 square feet, provided no more than one such addition can occur within 10 years, should trigger a PUD. That's what staff is putting to the commission to consider. And then the second bullet point, any expansion or change to a legal pre-existing building on a single lot with equal or greater than 25,000 square feet in total area, except again for expansions or changes less than or equal to 1,000 square feet, provided no more than one such expansion and change can occur within 10 years, should require a PUD. Okay, and then for the last one, so this last one staff is requesting feedback on.
This was not in the September 5th report. And so this is about a PUD trigger, an additional one also for the I or B3 zoning districts be included that requires a PUD consideration for any principal or accessory uses, structures, or buildings, including stormwater facilities, if those are located within 100 feet of a property line of a residential zone property, and staff seeks feedback on that recommendation. Oh, and then I just always want to point out whenever we get late comments, Mr. Lackner submitted comments late today, and I just want to put to the public record that those were just distributed to the commission and that those will be posted in the next packet for this. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like, well, questions of staff?
I have,
Yes, Mr. Kirsch.
just to prove that I read every
I know you.
thing that Carl puts up there on packet page 85, a permitted use is bus terminal.
Oh,
I was,
Typo.
that one threw me.
Oh, you know, actually.
you get the council person Lidauer award for making sure that typos are not in our materials. 'Cause that used to be her job.
That's until now.
I was actually semi-prepared for that, because I actually saw that, but then I forgot to correct it.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's
So I have a question, just to explain a couple things. The process for a special use is identical to the process for a PUD, correct?
Yes, with different standards.
They have some different standards, right? But it's still a public hearing.
Yep.
We still take testimony. We still rule on whether or not they meet the standards of the special use or the PUD. So in some of these cases, and I'm going to this last item, because I know that's what these folks are here to talk about, it's a belt and suspenders in the case, because I know they're going to reference a case that was before us at one point. That would be a belt and suspenders case. I mean, there's a difference between a PUD and even within a PUD, you really couldn't have legal standing, I don't believe, to deny a permitted use if it complied with the zoning ordinance other than a PUD. That's just my feeling. It would be very hard, let's put it that way. If it's a more intense use, if it's something different, I mean, let's, as has been before us, where the use is more intense than what the ordinance anticipates, that's fair game. But for instance, we couldn't talk about the use necessarily. We could talk about the intensity of the use and some of those other things. I know that Mr. Laxner says something in here about, 2 or 3 principal by right land uses on a single light industrial lot adjacent to a residential without a PUD. That exists in other places in the community. It's a single building, and so in fact, right behind Dunkin' Donuts, there's a little strip of properties. They have some commercial uses in there, but they also have an electric company that rents space there. In fact, I think they own the development. So why would we allow it? If it complies with the zoning ordinance, I don't know why we wouldn't allow it. And so I personally think there is no additional, I think that's a belt and suspenders thing in this case, number one. And number two, if we're concerned about proximity to residential districts, we should take a look at the setbacks that were required in some of those districts as they abut a residential district. We shouldn't have to make them go through a PUD just because they abut a residential district. We could handle it by saying, we want, if it's 30 feet, maybe we want 50 feet or 100 feet or whatever. There is a way to create a buffer between a residential district and a commercial or an industrial district that maybe that's something that the council might want us to look at. I don't know. But, to me, doing a PUD doesn't resolve that problem in my mind. You wanted
Just
to
to
add
give
something?
you a little context, I
Sure.
think that this started with one of the issues I'm sure
Yep.
that the rest of the commission will hear
Yep.
about tonight. And I think it's good for historical perspective, but it started because the code actually is written pretty clearly on certain issues. And Corporation Counsel weighed in and went and said, that's not how we've done it in precedent. So precedent was going the opposite way of what the code actually said. And people in the community wanted it to go a different way. And so I think part of this was to ensure that there is a hearing and to clarify what in fact we want to do going forward. And so there was quite an outcry from the public, basically as a catalyst from this one particular issue in a neighborhood. And that's why I think we're
Well,
looking to you for a little bit of
Fine, but
clarification.
there are other ways to handle it other than a
Absolutely.
PUD, and I will not support. I personally, right now, based on what I read and what the staff is telling me, I'm going to support what the staff drafted, which was, these other issues and not necessarily policy 3. I think my feedback is it's not necessary if, particularly, one of the issues is what's a structure and what's a building and what's the impact on the surrounding community. A stormwater detention facility or detention, I don't mean retention, detention facility that's dry 95% of the time.
Clarification.
I don't think that's a use. That's a requirement for building a building. Yes, Joel.
Just want to be clear about something. Okay, so we're talking about principal building structures here. And in the memo, we talk about that, right? And so there are certain uses that are principal uses that don't necessarily have
Structure.
buildings. They don't have buildings. They have a structure. They may have structure. So for instance, in the broadest expanse of things, right, you consider a parking lot as a structure.
Well,
Literally, okay? I mean, if you want to be literal about it, it's a structure. There are other things that are structures, right, that don't necessarily constitute buildings. And so in the past, like what we were just talking about, is that PUDs were triggered for multiple buildings, not necessarily multiple structures on a site. Now, the reason why we have the table that we circulated and further expanded upon and circulated further after the initial posting is to show you that there are these uses that could be principal uses that just have structures, that don't have buildings. And so to the extent that you're concerned about that and you want multiple structures to trigger a PUD, that's fine. This is where we're clarifying this. And as the Councilmember Lidauer said, it said you could read the code as it is, and it does, you could say. So we're seeking that feedback, and we're talking about what prior practice has been, and has been really reserved for buildings, not necessarily just.
But a lot of those so-called structures are really, even if you were generous, could be considered accessory uses, not accessory even if they were an accessory structure. So for instance, if I'm building a shopping center, my parking lot is an accessory use.
Structure.
Right?
Structure.
And let's take Target as an example, right?
It's-
That is a structure,
Well, it's
right?
an
Because
accessory, well, that's true.
but I'm just saying,
Right.
if it was being built today, that parking deck is technically a structure,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
It's there for a reason, because it's there to have stormwater underneath it, but it's a structure. Would almost any reasonable person say that's a structure? I don't think so. I mean, it's an accessory use because you need the parking to support the use, the primary use.
I might.
And that may be a little different than where we're going, so I apologize, I
I would
muddied
say,
the water.
Folks would say it's a structure. The question is should it trigger a PUD?
I don't think so.
You have the
Yeah.
Target building there, and you have this parking structure.
No.
And now you have two structures on a lot. So
I don't
therefore,
think
a
it-
by right use would then trigger a PUD.
You'd have to have it for anything that has a parking lot. So
Right.
building
Yeah.
a parking lot.
Basically.
Now, but having
Everything.
said that, there's a nuance, just let me finish. But the difference here in the Target case is that structure that is the parking is an accessory use.
Yes.
It's not a principal use.
Right.
So in that case, it would not trigger that PUD.
Right.
okay? So where we get into the triggering of the PUD is when it's a principal use. And how do we decide on what's a principal use? Well, you look to the use table. Those are principal uses. So in our use table, we have a series of principal uses that may only consist of structures. And so to the extent that you think that multiple principal structures in that case should trigger a PUD, that would be then the direction, and we would clarify the code, but leave it the way it is.
Okay.
Well, wait. The use table, the P is for
Permitted.
permitted, not principal.
Correct. But the use table consists of only principal uses.
Okay.
That's it, in its entirety,
And
not
that's-
accessory.
That's
Yep.
what I was making sure.
Yep.
Right.
But you could have, for instance, the same thing as the Target facility,
Right.
right?
But that's.
Where you have the parking structure, same exact structure, but it could be a freestanding parking garage. And then you have a Target or a retail store. That would trigger
A
a PUD. But if it was accessory, it would not.
I mean, I think it has to go with the, I mean, I don't see a reason to change it, let's put it that way, personally. But I'm sure we're gonna get enlightened in 3-minute segments in a minute. All right, anything else? All right, guys, I'm assuming that they have come to testify.
So, yeah, I mean, you certainly should take from testimony from the audience, but so that's with regard to number one.
Right.
Number two is basically clarifying the code, because the code now has this term new. You know, how is that interpreted? So we clarified that, and so I hope that the commission.
That's fine.
Feels that that's clear. And then number three is, dealing with essentially, in the I and B3 districts, principal uses, structures, and buildings located within 100 feet of a residential zoning district, including stormwater facilities, which are an accessory use.
Yeah, that's an accessory. All right, come on up. We got to swear you in. Mr. Laxner, are you going to be talking or not? Stand up, please. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, 3 minutes, that's it, because it's 5 to 10, and I have to be downtown at 7 in the morning tomorrow.
My name is Steve Gold, 1581 Park Avenue West. Before I get to my prepared comments, I do want to react to what the chairman said and respectfully disagree. There's a big difference between an SUP and a PUD. There are additional standards that apply only to a PUD, and there are significant additional submittals required for a PUD. They are indeed very different animals. Given the time limit, the 3-minute time limit though, I'm not going to comment on the substance. I want to talk about 402A, the provision that talks about land use and the process that the commission is following here. I absolutely commend the PDC for taking a look at this issue with reference to the past incident that Councilman Lidauer mentions. But what we have here is a mistake and should not go forward as structured. And there are 3 reasons why it's a mistake. The plain meaning of 402A talks about doing a PUD based on land use. It is plainly there in the statute. In the incident that Councilman Lidauer references, that we understand that the city has ignored that requirement. At a council meeting, Corporation Council attempted to dress that up as precedent or as consistent practice. But my decades of legal training tells me that administrative interpretation does not override the plain words of the statute. So what we have here is the city not doing what it's required to do by law. Frankly, every resident of Highland Park who has been aggrieved by this failure of the city to follow the law has the ability to bring a claim against the city for that failure. And in fact, you are making that worse tonight by putting on the record an admission that you have not been doing what the law requires with respect to land use and PUDs. Second, In reviewing the materials for this meeting, I note that the staff talked about a reason for removing land use from the PUD requirement as, and I quote, regulatory burden. Frankly, I am offended by the staff talking that way about regulatory burden. I absolutely acknowledge that the commissioners here are volunteers, and absolutely a million thanks to you for putting up with the complaints and the objections that come from the public that you're often powerless to do anything about. But the staff is paid by the city, and the staff should not be looking for mechanisms to reduce regulatory burden. Their job should not be to smooth out regulatory burdens for irresponsible developers, but rather to advocate for the interests of the citizens who fund their salaries, and to support processes like the PUD to support citizen input and political accountability. I am absolutely not opposed to responsible development in Highland Park to improve our city and improve its finances. But I am opposed to closing off citizen input and political accountability. With respect to regulatory burden.
3 minutes are up, I'm afraid.
Let me mention the last thing.
If you can wrap it up.
I will wrap it up quickly. This amendment process is also flawed. We're ostensibly here looking at an amendment to the zoning code. I went through the materials and nowhere in there did I find the text of an amendment as to 402A. It's just not there. So how are you holding a public hearing and obtaining citizen input and potentially debating findings of fact when the zoning code amendment that you're purporting to act upon has not been put forward to the public? Thank you. Thanks for allowing the extra time.
Sure. Mr. Laxner?
Michael Laxner, 1967 Canal Avenue. I'm very frustrated by this whole discussion, to be honest with you. If you look at the way the 15402 is written, it is clearly written, and it was very frustrating to have that denied on two different avenues, whether you're talking about two land uses or whether you're talking about two structures. The principal structure for the Muller was the auto storage, was the principal land use, was the principal auto lot. But the principal structure, based on their own previous rendering, talking about a parking lot on Skokie Boulevard, I'm not sure if it was accurate or somebody else, specifically laid out that that was a structure, a principal structure for the principal land use. And to deny us the opportunity to have that PUD under those circumstances, based on that language for two principal uses or two principal multiple structures, was very detrimental to us. And to have that just be dismissed so lightly really frustrates me. You know, we've been at this for 3.5 years looking for any kind of protection from staff directly. They know what we're looking for. We're looking for the setbacks you talked about. We're looking for the berms we've asked for during the previous development. Nothing comes from them except to try and clean up the language that Corporation Council had to clean up on his own with waving his magic wand and saying presidents. You know, that's fine if that's the way this city wants to be run. But the code's got to mean something. And you really need to, you know, consider the wording and why it should be stay in the code. At this point, if you don't agree with you know, you say don't talk about one building. Well, they don't want to trigger a PUD, or only trigger a PUD if the setback is 100 feet off of a residential property. Well, that in itself is a setback, and I think they even mentioned it as a setback in their findings of preliminary findings of fact. So I mean, there's other way. You know, if you want to do that, fine. But then your recommending body recommend to them to put the setbacks on the agenda. Put the berms on the agenda. Give us some protections. We have nothing. We can have a commercial building 3 feet from the front property line. Would you want that in your neighborhood? I don't think so. I'm sorry I'm getting upset, but I've been at this for 3.5 years and nothing's come of this. It's downright frustrating to keep coming before this commission when you know exactly what we're looking for, but nothing gets done. I don't know where else to go with this. I mean, it's really frustrating. You know, we can have parking within the 25-foot setback. Would you want an industrial, is that gonna be the gateway? Even with the 100-foot setback away from the residential property, you could have a commercial building right next to that 100-foot setback, 3 feet off the property line. Would you want that? Mr. Chairman, you didn't want a tobacco shop in your neighborhood. It's very convenient that you were able to get rid of it.
So, any other public comment? So let me just, huh?
Go ahead, but let
me just address one thing, and Mr. Laxner, I don't disagree that we should be looking at setbacks. I think I said that already this evening, right? But I also know that during hearings with anybody, I'm not talking about the particular case you were looking at, we've used special use to get concessions out of and make plans better. We've done that consistently. You know, your interpretation may be that their principal use was one thing, their statement to us was it was something else. So I have to go by, we have to go by what we're hearing, not only from the petitioner, but from you all as well. And we did listen to you. Maybe we didn't go all the way that you wanted us to go. But at the end of the day, we did the best we could. And I don't know that making these changes make it any better or worse at this point, because I mean, I just don't think it makes it any, it really has in my mind, and I know there is a different standard with a PUD and a special use, but at the end of the day, the result was kind of the same. It wouldn't, I don't think it would have changed the result. You can disagree with that. I understand that. But, you know, at this point, you know, I've expressed my personal, I'm just one member of the commission, right? I didn't, you know, and I personally, I will tell you, I object to the fact that you thought by limiting the areas that a smoke shop could be located in was personally done to benefit me, because it was basically all of downtown as well. So I'm not going to relitigate the past, but do me a favor. If you want to come after me personally, let's have a discussion outside, because I'm perfectly willing to have it. All right, other comments from the commission, and then we'll decide how we want to do that. Commissioner Heck.
Just kind of, I pulled up section 402, and because I was troubled when I heard in Mr. Laxner's submission saying that the city is not following its own ordinances. And I guess, Mr. Gold, you said the same thing. The language here says, and I'm not giving the city legal advice here, I'm just a member of a commission, but no principal structure shall be located upon a legal lot of record which contains any other principal structure or land use unless such lot is improved as part of a special use in the nature of a planned unit development. Their principle, the word principle is there in both parts. A principal structure where there's another principal structure or land use. So in order to trigger a PUD under this provision, you have to have a principal structure and another principal structure or principal land use. And I actually agree with the chairman. I think that's the guardrails that we need here. We can't, because an accessory, there's always going to be an accessory use. You're going to have a parking lot. You're always going to have a parking lot or some sort of park. And if we change the language here to include accessory land uses, every single development everywhere is going to require a PUD. There's just no way around it. And that's all right. I'll say it as an editorial comment. Highland Park already has a bad reputation among the developer community as being extraordinarily difficult. We can't, that would make it exponentially worse. And that's the last thing we want to do, is make it even worse than it already is. And you know, I think actually staffs would be well served to try to make it easier on developers to you know, bring projects here that are beneficial to the community. But again, I was troubled by this, and then I read the language of the ordinance, and I don't think what Mr. Elrod was saying was that we're just going on precedent, it doesn't matter what the language of the ordinance says. He was saying precedent this is how we interpret that section, which is exactly what we're supposed to do. And consistently, based on the plain language of the ordinance, as I read. So I don't think the city is ignoring its own ordinances, but that's my opinion. Anyway.
Anyone else want to comment? Yes, Mr. Kirsch.
Gosh, I wish I'd had more time to study Mr. Laxner's letter today, and I would like more time to read it, because I think he raises a lot of issues. It's confused me, and I'm not sure what's before us is helpful at all. And I think maybe we need a more deeper, basic review of what a planned unit development is and where we want to use it.
I think we all would go for that.
And not this piecemeal approach. I love planned unit developments. I wish everything was a planned unit development. I think the control and innovation that they can bring is very helpful. But I also understand the regulatory burdens there. And that's why I think the voluntary part, that we have a lot of developers who come with us and do this voluntarily, tells you, and you see the results of their work, it ought to tell you how good those planned unit development projects turn out in general. But I honestly think we need, I can't.
It's fine.
It's a,
So what you, I mean, I don't, and the staff was really clear that they're not necessarily looking for us to take action tonight, but in terms of moving something to council. And I think, to be honest, I did not anticipate that we would be taking action to move it to council tonight, but I think you raised some very good points. Mr. Mancis, you have something you wanted to add or not?
I think we kind of, I don't know if we just glossed over it, but, the question was raised about I and B3 zoning districts, and I don't know that we had a chance to opine on it, but, I think that there's perhaps a master planning issue. I've got enough of a foundational understanding of zoning and what it was originally meant to do, and I think fundamentally having I zoning districts next to residential to begin with is deeply problematic. And so I think having any type of mechanism to foster a better relationship between those two zoning districts would be wise.
And I don't disagree with you. Let me explain how I think this all came to be, because it's been I zoning for years, right? I can only tell you about my experience in my neighborhood, where there's what I would call some orphan zoning conditions, right? Where we've got a business use surrounded by residential, literally, that's not on a major street. It's on one of the suburban streets. And 20 years ago, when they redid the master plan the last time, I think it's been 20 years, hasn't it, Joel?
Yes.
Something like that.
At least.
We had neighborhood meetings, and I went to one of them, and I said, this zoning doesn't match. We should get rid of it. And they looked at the buildings that were there and go, oh, no, it's fine. We like it just the way it is. I almost guarantee you, almost every time we get into that, that's what they see what's there. And in the case, in some cases, if it's solo cup, for instance, they're comfortable with solo cup. It's what they know. But they don't, citizens don't go through and say, what are all the uses in this district that this could be? And it could be built, far more intense. And so they tacitly endorse the status quo, and so nothing changes. I'm not saying that it won't change as we redo the master plan this time. I would hope it would. But at the end of the day, that's how we wind up where we are, because people understand what they are comfortable with, what they see and know, and they don't do the research to say what it could be down the line. And so that's where we are today. As we go through the master planning process, I would hope that the community would would give us input and would take a look at what the ordinance requires or allows under each zoning district, because I don't have, I think, I don't have a problem with anything that's been said in terms of, do we want more buffers? Yeah, we should have more buffers. I mean, it's not spot zoning, but it's certainly not contextual with some of the other areas that are surrounding it.
Well, I'll just round out my thoughts with this. I think that relationship between industrial or light industrial, and if it has a manufacturing element to it, and it's being adjacent to residential is the most critical kind of zoning that you can have next to each other. And I think, anything that we can do where a planned development is triggered because of that relationship would be advisable until a master plan is redone 20-some years later.
But hopefully it's going to be redone in the next couple of
We'll be
years.
doing that next year.
Right.
We're going to be engaging.
But in the interim,
Right.
I mean,
In the
it's-
interim, and this is why we're here.
That's why we're
right
doing
now.
this.
Yes, in part because we had listened to council and the neighbors and others about these matters, and these are the triggers that need to be reconciled to address these matters at this juncture. So that's why we're here.
Vice Chair, you had no comments?
I have
you
no
said?
comments.
Okay, Commissioner Arnold?
I think I'm just too new to this table and not understanding the full complexity of this. So I'm just going to be quiet and listen for right now.
Okay. Jackson?
No question.
Okay. I think it would be appropriate to have a motion to continue this, but have you do you need more input than what you've heard just now, guys?
Well, here's the input that we need. We were seeking, it seemed to be that the consensus around item number 2 with regard to the existing buildings and the net result of 25,000 square foot or
I
more
think that's
seemed
not
to
an
be
issue.
not an issue. I didn't hear any concern about that. So, okay, that will be in the ordinance. The other trigger was related to for I and B3 zoning districts to be included, that is a trigger for any principal or accessory uses, structures or buildings, including stormwater facilities within 100 feet of a residential district. This is a type of buffer, and what it does is it ensures that if anything is located within that area, any of those items, that it would trigger a PUD, regardless of if it was a single building or not, or a single use or not. And the reason for that is because those are industrial districts next to residential districts, so there's greater scrutiny. That does that. The third item, what was indicated as 1 in your memo, is about what should be triggering a PUD, okay? The multiple uses, the multiple structures, and the multiple buildings. And we talked about that. That seems to be one that is gotten a mixed kind of review from the commission as to what that should be. You might consider, and we did give an example of one where there'd be more than 2 principal uses or 2 or more principal uses in downtown. Every single building would need a PUD. I mean, I just want to point that out.
Or any kind of strip center like
right.
Out on, like the one I mentioned behind.
And that
That's
could
crazy.
be what everybody wants, but I just want to point that out. So there might be a compromise that says, well, maybe we should tailor it to the zoning districts, and perhaps in certain districts that makes sense, in other districts it doesn't. I don't know. Another way to deal with that is the issue with the, if you look at the table that we provided about, are there uses that you're concerned that do not require a SUP? Now, as we pointed out in our memo, there is a difference between an SUP and a PUD. Both are SUPs, but the standards are different, and so we did highlight that in our memo. So that's something to consider when considering that number 1 in the memo there with regarding to the trigger of multiple principal buildings, structures, and uses.
Is it principal or principal and accessory?
Principal.
Okay.
That's the key here.
Right.
So it's not, and that's why I used the example I did. You can have a situation where you have the same physical result. One will require a PUD, the other will not. Because if it's an accessory building to the other one as opposed to an accessory or a principal use, okay?
So let's,
Some principal uses don't contain any buildings. They
So,
just don't.
so let's go back to number 3 and let me kind of
The
put a
100
bow
foot,
on it,
yep,
right?
yep.
With a business use or business district, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even B3. Some of these lots would not necessarily allow a 100-foot buffer if those types of uses, if you couldn't have a parking lot or a
We'll provide you
stormwater,
maps
a stormwater facility, you're basically, it's in some ways an adverse taking in some.
No, I
ways.
wouldn't
So-
say it was an adverse.
Well, you're gonna
It's a
extremely
new regulation that
you're gonna
would be more
ex-
sensitive to residentially budding
Right.
districts. That's
And I'll go back to what what Commissioner Heck just said. And that is, Highland Park already has a reputation in the development community that this is not an easy or good place to locate, right? Because it is difficult to get through. I mean, I've had former client built in Highland Park as a Highland Park resident, won't ever build here again because it just was too much of a pain. And somewhere we got to find balance, right? I mean, that's, I think, what I hope we're trying to find, which is why I'd rather see this dealt with through setbacks and not through adding additional requirements. I mean, I think one of the things you can do best for any kind of landowner or developer is provide some level of certainty. And so if it's handled with setbacks, it's pretty cut and dry. You have 100 feet or you don't have 100 feet, and you
be the
can
recommendation
plan
of the
accordingly,
commission. I mean,
right? But if it's a PUD that you could get closer to the land, because triggered because you're 100 feet within the residential district, doesn't necessarily say you need a 100-foot buffer. It just means you got to go through a process that you wouldn't necessarily have to go through if you were on a slightly different site. And so, if in fact we rightfully are trying to protect the residential property owner, and we're trying to provide some certainty to a developer, that to me is the best way to do it, not by making them go through a PUD hearing. But that's me. And so, that's why I think number 3 is, the third, to me, is, it's well-intended, but I don't think it's effectively giving you certainty in terms of the solution. Right? Number 1, in terms of, put number 1 back up for me, will you, Carl, just so I can remember, because I'm tired. Didn't get a whole lot of sleep. To me, it should be multiple principal buildings or uses. I think principal uses, right? I don't have a problem with principal. Well, no, I think it should just be multiple principal buildings, because again, otherwise you're going to get every multi-tenant building in the community having to go through a PUD process, as I understand that. Is that correct, Joel?
It's
Well, they're
multiple
grandfathered in.
uses.
They're grandfathered
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
but
but I mean-
but anybody who comes to redevelop a site, if it's a multi-tenant building,
Well, it's right now, it's principal structure or land use.
Right.
Land
Right.
use, not
right?
use alone.
No, land use, which is different than use in the building, right?
That's
I think so.
Right,
Right, and
So-
that's governed under other,
right.
Right.
So, I mean, but here they're saying, multiple principal structures, and, I still have issues with parking lots being considered structures
But
personally.
they're not principal.
But they're not.
They're not, they're accessory.
I want to put a caveat on that,
Sure.
that there's size requirements. In the city of Chicago, if you were going to build a grocery store, it's automatically a PUD. I mean, you cannot.
We have size requirements too,
No,
don't
but
we?
you can't say that you're not going to look at a parking lot just because it's an accessory structure. If somebody's gonna come and build a ginormous parking lot and a small building, you would probably wanna review that. You'd wanna then have extra information about the lighting and the landscaping and how which affect water drainage and the amount of impervious structure, and you would wanna look at it. And so it's really vague to say that you can just not have to look at anything that has an accessory parking
No,
lot.
but we do have the right to look at it because it goes through design review as part of the process. So lighting and things like that.
As of right, and
Any
code.
isn't it any non-residential building goes through design review when it's built? Yes.
Okay.
That includes lighting and signage and landscaping and all those items.
And I also want to point out, something was said, code has to mean something. The language of the code, and that everybody follows the code, and that means something. Otherwise, everyone comes in and makes negotiation, and then you don't have equity. And so I think it is important what the language of the code is, and that it means something, that it's applied equitably across all sites.
I don't think anybody is disagreeing with that.
Well, it was brought up by the public, and we are ourselves arguing about what the language means that's up there right now. And so if it's not readily accessible to a layperson to read the code and know what it means, then it is reliant upon interpretation from an expert, and then it can be interpreted one way here and another way there, and then it's not a code. So I just think we have to table this.
I would disagree with that last statement. We're gonna continue it anyway, but I would strongly disagree with that statement. Codes are interpreted. That's their nature. I mean, if it's a building code, there's a chief building official who interprets the code. If it's a zoning code, there's a zoning administrator who interprets the code. And I haven't seen a code that doesn't require from time to time an interpretation
Oh, absolutely.
out there. So
And
there is a
interpretations could be
process, there is a
published.
process, and an interpretation could be appealed. So, there's a process for dealing with that is inherent in the code, correct, Marcus? Am I making a mistake here? No, that's right. Right. So the question about, enforcing or applying the code consistently and equitably is fair, but we count on the administrators who interpret that code to do that. That's their job. I mean, I don't think it's up to us. I don't think you're ever going to make it so totally clear that there's not going to have to be interpretations. And at some point, you have to rely on the staff in this case, or the zoning administrator, or the building official to interpret it consistently. So it's 10:25, and we're going to get out of here sooner rather than later. So do I have when would you like to have this back before us, Joel?
We can do the 17th, Carl?
Yes. I'm not getting too jammed up because you told me today we got a bunch of stuff and we already have Waterway coming back.
Is it a good time to take off?
Huh?
Like miss a meeting?
No, you're coming to my birthday party.
Oh, that's
What,
The next meeting after that.
you want, I mean, are you, I mean, if you're comfortable that we're not gonna get
I don't know what the
overloaded.
direction is from the commission on that, and so we would have to,
All right, let's continue it to October 17th. If the agenda's, if we get too late, we'll,
well, then we can
Further
continue it
continue
again. Sure.
so do I have a motion to continue this to October 17th?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All right,
Notice is actual?
notice is actual. I guarantee you that our friends will be here, be shocked if, and I appreciate their input, I really do. Before we start our other business, I just want to congratulate Commissioner Kirsch and Student Commissioner Jackson, because they're related to National Merit Scholarship finalists, right? Semifinalists.
One's not just
So-
related, he is.
One is, and one is related to it, right?
That's right, my son and Jackson's cohort.
Wonderful.
Nice. Congratulations, we're really proud of of.
7 at Highland Park High School.
7 at the high school.
That's a lot.
Very
It's
nice.
great, it is a
Great.
lot. I don't know what they had, they didn't have any at Deerfield, did they, this year?
Didn't see any.
They had 10?
They had a number.
They had a lot. Okay. Administrator design review update?
No.
Our next regular meeting is October 17th, 2023, at 7 o'clock in this chamber. Not at the Country Club. It will be in the Highland Park City Hall Council Chamber. Case briefing, Mr. Fontaine?
Mr. Chairman, the council adopted changes to the code related to changes that were necessary to conform with FEMA's water and the flood insurance program, the National Flood Insurance Program.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other business from the public? Gentlemen, you got anything else you want to address us on that isn't on the agenda? With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Heck, seconded by Vice Chair Moore. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Now I gotta go to bed because I gotta be.